Chapter 4484. He could only temporarily settle for the next best thing and earn more points from the other escort agencies. After all, with his strength, even if he wasn't at his peak, he would still be able to kill as many Golden Core experts as he could without any suspense. As for seeking revenge on Lin E, as long as that punk was still in the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, as long as he was still in the Verdant Arc territorial waters, it wouldn't be difficult for Chung Haonan to find an opportunity in the future. There was no need to take the risk now. What happened next was as expected. The situation was completely under Chung Haonan's control. Although the high-ranking Golden Core cultivators of the other escort agencies were not weak, they were no different from ordinary passers-by in front of a monster like Chung Haonan. Chung Haonan was able to deal with them easily. To make it easier for him to farm points, Chung Haonan deliberately controlled his strength. He only knocked his opponent off the stage with one move. He had no intention of killing him. After all, according to the rules, once the Golden Core experts of these escort agencies died, they wouldn't be able to accept challenges like the other agencies. Naturally, Chung Haonan wouldn't be able to farm points from them. Seeing Chung Haonan's winning streak and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's points rising, pushing the Four Seas Escort Agency out of the top 5, Boundless Sea looked like he had eaten **T. He wanted to cut this bastard into pieces. They had said that they would crush the Heavens Equal Escort Agency in one go, but now they had given up halfway through. Instead, they were focused on earning points, and the Four Seas Escort Agency had become the biggest victim. Why did these people only know how to make trouble for themselves? However, even though his stomach was about to explode, Boundless Sea couldn't do anything about it. Even if he was the head of the 5 judges and had the halo of the Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference, he couldn't just stand out and interrupt the match unless he had a reasonable excuse. Unfortunately, Chung Haonan continued to challenge and grind for points. Everything was done according to the rules he announced. Even if Boundless Sea squeezed water out of his brain, what excuse could he come up with? He couldn't say it was a loophole in the rules, could he? Wouldn't that be slapping his own face? Boundless Sea was so regretful that his scalp was about to fall off. On the other hand, Lin E and the others were happy for Chung Haonan to do this. After all, no matter how easy it was for Chung Haonan to farm points, he couldn't avoid the consumption of qi. It was just a little more or a little less. The more points he earned, the more qi he used up, and Lin E, who was meditating off the stage, had more time to condense the super bomb. And that was how Lin Yi's advantage was. If Chung Haonan was tactful enough not to challenge the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, then so be it. However, if he lost his cool, the consequences would be dire. As a result, Lin E, Qi Wenhan, and the others were able to sit back and relax. After 2 wins and 2 losses, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency still had 1,070 points. Even if Chung Haonan were to grind points like this, it wouldn't be easy for him to catch up. After all, under the current challenge rules, farming points was not as easy as it seemed. It was actually a technical problem. Of course, Chung Haonan could choose not to kill his opponent and then challenge them again without any effort. But the problem was that the escort agencies he had targeted didn't have many points to speak of. Most of them only had 100 or 200 points. Some didn't even have 100 points. As soon as their points reached 0, they would be unconditionally eliminated. This meant that Chung Haonan could only farm 200 points at most from each escort agency. The weaker ones could only farm 100 points. After that, they would have to change targets and challenge a Golden Core expert at their peak condition. Strong was strong, but Chung Haonan wasn't made of iron. These Golden Core experts were able to become the higher-ups of their respective escort agencies. Which one of them was easy to deal with? In the beginning, Chung Haonan had an easy time farming points. however, as he consumed more and more qi. Especially with the injuries left behind by Lin Yi, every time he faced an opponent at their peak condition, it was clear that he was unable to do as he wished. In the beginning, he could easily defeat his opponent in one move, but later, he had to spend the time of a joss stick to burn before he could barely win. For a moment, the atmosphere became rather strange. Everyone could see that Cheng Haonan was obviously exhausted and could not hold on much longer. But no one knew how much longer this fellow could last. After defeating 4 escort agencies in a row, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's points had reached as high as 860 points. Not to mention the 4 Seas Escort Agency. Even the Divine Wind Escort Agency, which was originally in second place, had been left far behind. The only suspense now was whether Cheng Haonan could last until he overtook the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. If he could do that, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would replace the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and become the biggest super dark horse in this year's South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. It would also lock in the position of hegemon of the escort agencies and open a new chapter. If he could not do that, the result would be a little intriguing. This was because Cheng Haonan was already an arrow at the end of its flight. If he could not maintain a strong winning streak, it was very likely that he would be targeted by the escort agency that had obtained the right to challenge him. When that time came, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would very likely have to cough up all the points they had earned little by little. Cheng Haonan is riding a tiger now. It's hard to get off now. Serves him right. Qi Wenhan said to Lin Yi with a relaxed expression. He was instantly in a good mood when he thought this through. Yes, he is indeed a little too greedy. If he had stopped in time when he reached second place, he would not have fallen into such a passive situation. Lin Yi said with a nod. That's right. If he had stopped earlier, then he would have been able to preserve enough physical strength and Shen Qi. With the terrifying strength he had displayed before, even if the right to challenge fell into the hands of other escort agencies, they would not dare to attack the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. So, it could be said that he could sleep peacefully. But now, if he had stopped in time, he could have preserved enough physical strength and true qi. With the terrifying strength he had displayed previously, even if the right to challenge fell into the hands of other escort agencies, they would not dare to attack the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. So, he could be said to be free of worries. But now, Qi Wenhan sneered. As the two of them spoke, Cheng Haonan once again challenged a new escort agency. Facing the other party's Golden Core Stage executives in their peak condition, he could only brace himself and continue to fight. He had no other choice. At this time, the sky was already dark. Bright torches were lit everywhere in the magic cold square. At the same time, many fluorites were set up in advance. Not only was the light not dimmer than it was in the evening, but it was also much brighter. It did not affect the competition at all. Chapter 4485. At that time, the ranking of the 32 escort agencies would finally be settled. Before that, there were still many variables that could not be determined. Cheng Haonan was still persevering. From the moment he defeated Lin Yi in the afternoon, the entire South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event had become his one-man show. The others could do nothing about it and could only sit and watch from the sidelines. There was nothing they could do about it. The right to challenge was firmly in Cheng Haonan's hands. This guy is actually using this trick. Lin Yi watched Cheng Haonan's movements in the arena, and the corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. Stalling for time? That's too shameless. Qi Wenhan also saw through Cheng Haonan's plan and could not help but be speechless. It was not just the two of them. At that moment, the entire audience was discussing it. At this moment, Cheng Haonan had deliberately slowed down the pace of his attacks and defenses. In order to preserve as much strength as possible while stalling for time, he had actually adopted a passive strategy of only defending and not attacking. Such a domineering and powerful existence was actually forced to use such a despicable strategy. It was truly lamentable. Although Chung Haonan seemed to be running out of genuine qi and was somewhat lacking in strength, his formidable strength was still there. If he really wanted to be passive and avoid the battle, even Qi Wenhan, who was known as the small invincible golden core realm, would not necessarily be able to gain the upper hand, let alone the average golden core expert. Unless the opponent was changed to Lin Yi, it would be more likely. However, this was impossible. Chung Haonan had been firmly holding on to the right to challenge, and his biggest concern was that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency would obtain the right to challenge. To him, that would be the real disaster. Passively fighting until the time for a joss stick to burn was almost up, then suddenly exploding and knocking the opponent off the arena. Chung Haonan was now extremely stingy with the use of genuine qi. Every bit of it had to be calculated carefully, and absolutely not a single bit was wasted. After all, to him, whether or not he could retreat in one piece today all depended on the success of this stalling strategy. If he failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. This kind of battle was really not worth watching at all. The audience below the stage were all yawning endlessly. If it wasn't for the strict rule of not interfering with the progress of the competition, they would have already thrown things onto the stage. What kind of **T was this? Time passed bit by bit, and Chung Haonan's delaying tactic finally succeeded in dragging it to the end. It was already 9:00 in the morning, and everyone's eyes were automatically focused on the referees. They really couldn't stand this kind of boring and drowsy match any longer. As the chief judge of this year's conference, Boundless Sea's expression had completely sunk. He gritted his teeth, wishing he could slap Chung Haonan into mincemeat. According to his original plan, he was prepared to play some tricks during the second lot drawing and snatch the right to challenge from the 4C's escort agency. Then, he would challenge others to earn some points. Even if it did not go according to his ideal plan, it would at least make the situation look better for his escort agency. However, this time, because of Chung Haonan's shameless delaying tactic, just by relying on himself, he had dragged it until the hour of the 9:00. How could he have the time now? Looking at Chung Haonan's exhausted appearance, he looked like he was about to run out of oil. Boundless Sea wanted to drag it out a bit more. In any case, the conference only said that it would end at the hour of the 9:00. It didn't say whether it would end at the beginning or end of the 9:00. However, facing the anxious gazes of everyone below the stage, if he really did that, Boundless Sea had no doubt that he would definitely become the target of everyone's criticism. If everyone spat on him, he would be drowned alive. Helpless, Boundless Sea could only brace himself and walk to the center. Beside him, Qi Mingyuan and the others all had mocking expressions on their faces. This chief judge's 4C's escort agency had always been used to swaggering around. They had always acted like the overlord of the escort agencies, but now they were only a measly 6th in points. The dignified hegemon of the escort agency, who fought on their home turf, had lost to the 5 major escort agencies in the blink of an eye. This was simply unprecedented. This time, the 4C's escort agency would really be nailed to the pillar of shame in history. Because of time constraints, this year's Southern Continent Escort Agency Conference has come to an end. Boundless Sea's first sentence made everyone let out a sigh of relief. Each and every one of them had expressions of relief. F***CK. This pain in the ass match had finally come to an end. The audience immediately began to discuss amongst themselves. Right now, on the point rankings, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was still in first place with 1070 points. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency was in second place with 960 points. Third, fourth, and fifth place were Divine Wind Escort Agency, Great Sky Escort Agency, and Black Eagle Escort Agency. As for the Four Seas Escort Agency, they had been forced out of the top 5, settling at 6th place. Among them, the most exciting was the battle for first place between the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. These two escort agencies originated from the Weyark Sea territory, and their points were so high that all the other escort agencies could only look up to them in the dust. Most importantly, the difference between the two agencies was only 110 points. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency had chased after them for an entire afternoon, but in the end, they still fell short. It could only be said that this was the will of the heavens. Qi Mingyuan, Qi Wenhan, and even Lin Yi couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Their faces were filled with excitement. Even now, they still couldn't believe that their Heavens Equal Escort Agency had actually managed to take the lead all the way to the end, becoming the overlord of the escort agencies. In the Southern Continent Sea territory, this position was equivalent to the leader of the righteous path. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call them the number 1 power in the Southern Continent Sea territory. Who wouldn't be excited by such an honor? As for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, although it was a pity that they didn't manage to overtake the Heavens Equal Escort Agency in the end, they had risen from a small, unknown agency to become the high and mighty second agency. If Long Kiba wasn't satisfied with such a heaven-defying result, then he would really be drowned by everyone's spittle. This was just like a student's exam in the secular world. A straight-A student would sigh all day and say that he couldn't do well in his exams. In the end, when the results came out, he got second place in the whole school. How the F***king hell were the other slackers supposed to live? Looking at the big winners of this South Continent's Escort Agency Grand Meet, other than the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, the next biggest winner was the Black Eagle Escort Agency. Although it had the predecessor of the Yuantong Escort Agency, it was still a newly established escort agency after all. To be able to become one of the top 5 escort agencies in their first grand meet was definitely a cause for celebration, and there were no regrets to speak of. On the other hand, the biggest loser was undoubtedly the Four Seas Escort Agency. As the overlord of the escort agencies, they had fallen to 6th place. From now on, the Four Seas Escort Agency would become the laughingstock of everyone. The era that belonged to the Four Seas Escort Agency was gone forever. Chapter 44-86. Feeling everyone's mocking gazes, Boundless Sea, who had become the center of attention, couldn't help but feel his face heat up. He was so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole in the ground to hide in. Unfortunately, there was no such hole in the ground. Even if Boundless Sea wanted to hide, there was no place for him to do so. Of course, with his personality, he definitely wouldn't give up just like that. According to the rules of the conference, it was time for the chief judge to give a concluding speech. However, now that the Four Seas Escort Agency couldn't even enter the 5 Great Escort Agency, the title of chief judge naturally couldn't remain in Boundless Sea's hands. Letting the new overlord, Qi Mingyuan, speak was what everyone wanted. However, Boundless Sea clearly didn't plan on giving up his position just like that. With a solemn expression, he continued, "Even though the competition has ended, there is still an extremely important matter that I need to announce to everyone." What the hell is this guy doing? Qi Mingyuan had already stood up and was about to go on stage, but when he heard this, he couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He looked at each other in confusion. According to my observations, someone has cheated in this year's conference and used dishonorable methods to compete. This has brought shame to the fairness of the conference. So severe punishment must be meted out. Boundless Sea's words were stern and righteous. After rousing everyone's emotions, he loudly announced, "As the chief judge, I now revoke the points of Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and Dragon Boat Escort Agency and expel them from the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance. From now on, they will never participate in the conference again." What? The first and second place escort agencies are both disqualified? The crowd instantly went into an uproar. The entire Magic Lung Plaza instantly erupted. Everyone who had been drowsy from watching the competition suddenly became alert and shouted the same question. What's going on? Even the onlookers were so excited, let alone Qi Mingyuan and the others who bore the brunt of it. They all looked at Boundless Sea with the same expression. Is this guy F*** King crazy? Playing this kind of trick because he can't afford to lose? Who does he think he is? He's just a stray dog who lost his position as the overlord of the escort agencies. He can't even enter the 5 grade escort agency. Yet he still has the face to say that he is the chief judge of the conference, and even dares to declare that the first 2 agencies will be disqualified and permanently expelled from the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance. Qi Mingyuan and the others were shocked, but Long Qiba and Cheng Haonan were shocked. Apart from their ugly expressions, their hearts couldn't help but thump. Neither of them were idiots. From Boundless Sea's tone, they could faintly guess what he was planning. The crowd was about to go out of control. Boundless Sea wasn't worried at all. On the contrary, he was secretly delighted. In his opinion, the more agitated these people were, the better. The more agitated they were, the easier it would be for him to guide them. Once the crowd became agitated, everyone present would become a spear in his hand. Wherever he pointed, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would not be able to escape. In fact, in his original plan, this trump card was only meant to be used against the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. However, after recalling the course of the competition, suddenly a bright idea struck him. He might as well go all the way and crush the 2 escort agencies. He had no choice but to do this, even though he had killed a Dragon Boat Escort Agency. His 4 Seas Escort Agency would be able to rise back into the ranks of the 5 great escort agencies. At the very least, he wouldn't lose too much face. However, this wouldn't change the fact that the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency had become the hegemon of the escort agencies. Boundless Sea had all sorts of conflicts with the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency. In the future, if Qi Mingyuan became the leader, his fate could be imagined. His days definitely wouldn't be easy, so no matter what, he had to think of a way to destroy the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency. Now that he had a rare opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, it would be strange if he didn't take it. Boundless Sea, how exactly did my Equal of Heaven Escort Agency cheat? How did we use unfair methods to compete? You'd better tell me clearly in front of everyone. Otherwise, we'll have to fight to the death today. Qi Mingyuan slowly walked in front of Boundless Sea. His tone was calm, but his killing intent was chilling. Boundless Sea's words meant that he had completely shed all pretense of cordiality. Since the other side had already drawn the line, he naturally wouldn't back down. If Boundless Sea couldn't give a satisfactory explanation, he wouldn't hesitate to fight to the death with the 4 Seas Escort Agency. He, Qi Mingyuan, had started from scratch. In the dangerous waters of the southern continent, he had single-handedly brought the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency to glory. How could such an ambitious and ruthless person be easy to deal with? Even if their foundation wasn't as strong as the 4 Seas Escort Agency, when it came to bravery and courage, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency definitely wouldn't lose to anyone here. Head Escort Qi is right. Boundless Sea, why do you speak like you're farting? No matter what, you're still the previous hegemon of the escort agency. Are you really that bad at losing? You dropped out of the top 5, and you're already acting like a shameless villain? Isn't that too laughable? Long Kiba chimed in. He and Qi Mingyuan had an irreconcilable grudge. Unless he had no other choice, he definitely wouldn't be willing to go along with Qi Mingyuan's words. He wanted to be more strong-willed, but the problem was that he had a guilty conscience. With the Equal of Heaven escort agency acting as a shield, he still had a chance to bluff his way through. If he was singled out, he would undoubtedly die. Qi Mingyuan and Long Kiba's simultaneous attacks made everyone's gazes towards Boundless Sea extremely playful. With his current situation suddenly making such a slanderous accusation to drag down the number 1 and number 2 escort agencies, anyone would feel that Boundless Sea's motives were impure. After all, the 4 Seas escort agency had fallen out of the top 5. Such a humiliating matter had happened to the 4 Seas escort agency. It was obvious that the 4 Seas escort agency was struggling at death's door. It wouldn't be strange for Boundless Sea to do anything at this time. However, his desire to destroy the Equal of Heaven escort agency and the Dragon Boat escort agency was too much to be deceiving himself. In the eyes of at least 90% of the audience, Boundless Sea's actions were impossibly stupid. Not only would he not save the 4 Seas escort agency, he would only push the 4 Seas escort agency into an even more bottomless abyss. After all, ever since the Southern Continent escort agency's establishment, there had never been a situation where the number 1 and 2 escort agencies were eliminated. This was completely illogical. Everyone was in high spirits as they watched the show. In their eyes, this scene was much more interesting than the group arena. A match like Chung Haonan's would make people sleepy, but this definitely wouldn't. Just based on Boundless Sea's previous words, this matter was destined to become the focal point of the entire Southern Continent. This was a rich topic of conversation. Boundless Sea remained calm despite being stared at by everyone. He had no intention of backing down. To be continued. Chapter 4487. After all, he was used to being the overlord of an escort agency. No matter how despicable he was in private, he was always full of himself in public. You guys don't agree? Boundless Sea looked at Qi Mingyuan provocatively. As for Long Kiba and Chung Haonan, he didn't even bother to look at them. In his eyes, they were already dead. Ha! You're still acting like the head judge. You're used to being the overlord of an escort agency. You're not going to let go even if you're beaten to death. You think we'll agree? Qi Mingyuan sneered. What about you guys? What do you think? Boundless Sea smiled nonchalantly and turned to look at Zhao Bufan and the others. If the Heavens Equal escort agency and the Dragon Boat escort agency were destroyed, the 4 Seas escort agency would only rise from the 6th to the 4th place. However, the Divine Wind escort agency would rise from the 3rd place to the 1st place. The benefits they would receive would be much greater than the 4 Seas escort agencies. Moreover, this was a rare opportunity for the other 5 escort agencies. The bosses of these escort agencies had always placed profit above all else. There was no need to guess what they would choose. As long as he could obtain their support, Boundless Sea would be invincible, let alone the Dragon Boat escorts. Even the Heavens Equal escort agency wouldn't be able to make a comeback. Everyone looked at Zhao Bufan and waited for the chief escort of God Wind escort agency to speak. He didn't disappoint them. He coughed and said loudly, letting Heavens Equal escort agency and Dragon Boat escort agency be eliminated. Chief Escort High really has a good plan. Unfortunately, I don't agree with you. I beg to differ. Boundless Sea was stunned. He didn't need to use any strength to become the overlord of an escort agency. This was a fat piece of meat that was delivered to his doorstep. How could he disagree? My opinion is the same as Head Escort Zhao's, Great Sky Escort Agency said. After listening to the two men's statements, everyone's gazes turned to Zhao Shannying with great interest. Currently, The Black Hawk Escort Agency was ranked 5th and could be considered as one of the top 5 escort agencies in the country. My Black Eagle Escort Agency wouldn't do such a shameless and laughable thing, Zhao Shannying sneered. He curled his lips in disdain. Boundless Sea's expression instantly darkened. These 3 stance meant that none of the 5 great escort agency agreed. His position as the main judge was because 4C's escort agency was ranked 6th. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't seem right. This was completely different from what he had expected. It wasn't what he had expected at all. It wasn't just Boundless Sea. Even Qi Mingyuan couldn't help but look at these people with astonishment. Even he didn't think that these big bosses of the escort agency would be so righteous. At a time like this, the bystanders were all confused, but Zhao Bufan and the others knew that it wasn't because they found their conscience and changed their mindset. Especially God Wind Escort Company. If they said that they weren't tempted by the position of the head of the escort company, they would be lying to themselves. But the problem was that he didn't dare to take this hot potato. Boundless Sea dared to eliminate the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency with a single sentence. If the Divine Wind Escort Agency took over, wouldn't Boundless Sea do the same thing again? Wouldn't the Divine Wind Escort Agency be disqualified as well? It could be seen from everyone's mocking gazes. Boundless Sea's method was completely fooling around. It wasn't feasible at all. In this kind of situation, even if the God Wind Escort Agency got lucky, it would be a castle in the air. Not only would they offend the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and Dragon Boat Escort Agency, if something really happened, Boundless Sea could still push the blame onto them and make them the scapegoats. And he would stay out of it. After all, the God Wind Escort Agency was the biggest beneficiary. Boundless Sea's intentions couldn't be seen by others, but he wanted to hide it from these people's eyes. It was impossible. Not only did Zhao Bufan and the others not accept it, they even put on a righteous stance and made a false accusation. This unexpected reaction made Boundless Sea dumbfounded. He couldn't react for a long time. However, there was no turning back. Since Boundless Sea had already openly offended them, he couldn't just give up halfway. Zhao, Bufan, and the others' opposition could only mean one thing. They were stupid. If they didn't take the meat that fell into their mouths, then they couldn't blame the 4C's escort agency for not eating well. Ha! It seems like everyone doesn't know the truth. But since the head judge has already given such an obvious hint, can't you all use your brains to think before you speak? Starting from Zhao Bufan, Boundless Sea's mocking gaze swept across their faces one by one. In the end, his gaze landed on Qi Mingyuan and Long Qiba. Humph, if you have something to say, then say it. If we don't clear things up today, there will definitely be blood spilled between us. Qi Mingyuan snorted coldly. He wasn't afraid of Boundless Sea's dirty tricks at all. However, Long Qiba didn't have this confidence. Being stared at by Boundless Sea like this, he subconsciously shrunk his neck. He secretly glanced at Cheng Haonan, whose face was also ashen. Today's matter was probably over. Okay, then let everyone be witnesses. Boundless Sea smiled coldly and turned to Long Qiba. Head Escort Long, this head judge will ask you a question. You better answer truthfully. Do you know that Cheng Haonan and Wu Baoliang are both evil cultivators? Evil cultivators? Everyone's expressions changed. The powerful Cheng Haonan and Wu Baoliang were actually evil cultivators. Only Lin Yi's expression was normal. He didn't dare to say for sure whether Cheng Haonan was a real evil cultivator or not, but there was no doubt that Wu Baoliang was. This was something recognized by the Northern Island officials. However, what surprised Lin Yi was that even if they were evil cultivators, so what? Did everyone need to have such a big reaction? Due to the chaos in the southern continent's sea, murder and arson were everywhere. Lin Yi's first impression was that this should be a paradise for evil cultivators. Otherwise, why would Wu Baoliang run all the way here to take refuge? Everyone should have long been used to evil cultivators. There was no reason for them to be so shocked, right? In the end, Lin Yi was just an outsider. Although he had stayed here for a few months, his understanding of the southern continent's sea was not deep. He didn't even have a deep understanding of the southern continent's escort agency festival. If he knew that this was the representative of the southern continent's righteous path, he would understand why everyone had such a reaction to evil cultivators. Beside him, Qi Wenhan's reaction was interesting. After hearing Boundless Sea's words, he raised his hand and slapped himself in the face. His face was full of regret. F***CK. Why didn't I think of that? Chapter 4488. He knew that Wu Baoliang was a heretic, but he had never thought of using this point to make a fuss. It could only be said that as the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan still had a long way to go. If he wanted to reach the level of a crafty old fox like Boundless Sea, he still needed more experience. You're slandering us. Everyone, don't believe him. Boundless Sea is simply jealous and can't afford to lose. He maliciously slandered our Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Everyone had yet to digest this explosive inside story. Long Kiba hurriedly refuted with a red face, while Chung Haonan's face was pale. The worst situation had finally happened. Slandering us? Boundless Sea smiled calmly. He didn't even look at Long Kiba. He turned to the crowd and said, "Everyone here is a discerning person. Think carefully about the match between Wu Baoliang and Chung Haonan. Both of them had a strange layer of black aura. Don't you think it's strange at all?" At this point, if they still couldn't react, then they would truly be idiots. Before, when they hadn't thought about it in this direction, they hadn't felt that anything was wrong. But now that Boundless Sea had pointed it out, they immediately felt that there was something fishy going on. They're clearly only Golden Core perfection, but Wu Baoliang and Chung Haonan are far stronger than Golden Core experts. Even nascent soul experts might not be their match. Is this normal? Moreover, I believe you've never seen this strange layer of black aura on their bodies before, right? Boundless Sea struck the iron while it was hot. Nonsense. Seeing everyone's suspicious gazes, Long Kiba couldn't help but anxiously defend himself. Long Kiba couldn't help but explain, "Boundless Ocean, with your logic, does that mean all experts who can challenge those above them are evil cultivators? As the head escort of the Four Seas Escort Agency, are your standards so low you haven't even seen these geniuses before? As for the black aura, it's purely baseless malicious slander. This is a secret technique that will never be passed on to outsiders. Is it strange that you haven't seen it before?" Everyone's gaze focused back on Boundless Sea. Although they had their doubts, Boundless Sea's accusations lacked concrete evidence. Did he want to remove the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency from the list with just these speculations? Isn't this a little too far-fetched? "Humph, you're about to die, and you still want to quibble?" Boundless Sea sneered. "Then tell me, what kind of spiritual root type of cultivator could produce a black gas? Don't you think it's too easy for you to use the words unique secret technique? Regardless of whether it's a unique secret skill or not, it must be supported by the attribute of the spirit root. It is indeed impossible to create black energy. Wu Baoliang is dead, and we can't verify it from him, but Chung Haonan should at least prove it." Zhao Bufan suddenly interrupted. Even though he didn't want to be used by Boundless Sea as a tool, if he could prove that he was an evil cultivator, then things would be different. He couldn't let Boundless Sea take all the credit. Otherwise, Boundless Sea might take advantage of this opportunity to ride on his head again. With how shameless Boundless Sea was, it wasn't that they couldn't do something like exchanging contribution points for ranking. He has an extremely rare mutated spiritual root. It's normal that you guys haven't seen him before. Long Kiba said with a guilty conscience. Now that things had come to this, he could only bite the bullet. A mutated spiritual root. Not only could he explain why he could fight enemies of a higher level, but he could also explain the origin of the black energy. It was killing two birds with one stone. Of course, his excuse wasn't flawless. Whether it was a mutated spiritual root or not, as long as a professional spirit root testing tool was used to verify it. It was just that normal spirit root testing tools could be seen everywhere. However, it was very rare to have a 100% mutated spiritual root. Only those academies in the Eastern continent would have such a professional and exquisite tool. In the chaotic Southern continent, it was rare. Chung Haonan could only gamble that there wasn't such a tool prepared at the scene. That way, he would at least have a chance to turn the situation around. Otherwise, he would really lose his life. Sure enough, after Long Kiba said this, Zhao Bufan and the others couldn't help but frown. They really didn't have a 100% mutated spiritual root testing tool. Mutated spiritual root. Boundless Sea smiled calmly. Long Kiba and the others had handed themselves over to him. If he still couldn't deal with the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, then he didn't need to mingle in the Southern continent anymore. He immediately said coldly, "Okay, then tell everyone what kind of mutated spiritual root does Chung Haonan have. Let him come out and show us some basic martial arts. We'll know at a glance." Yes, show him. Everyone in the field agreed. They were just wondering why Chung Haonan never used basic martial arts, but only used ordinary punches and kicks to fight. Even if this was his fighting style, as a dignified expert in the Peak of Gold Core realm, he didn't even use his best martial arts. Wasn't it too strange? Not only Chung Haonan, but even Wu Bao Liang didn't show any basic martial arts with a clear attribute. He only showed a powerful martial art that everyone couldn't understand. Now that they thought about it, it was strange no matter how they looked at it. This Long Kiba was dumbfounded. Even he didn't know what to do now. For all evil cultivators, no matter if they started cultivating directly or entered the Tao halfway, there was at least one point that was indisputable. All evil cultivators had to destroy their previous spirit root attribute before they started cultivating. This was because all evil cultivation methods were against the norm, and the foundation of their creation was the reverse spirit root attribute. Not only the 5 normal spiritual roots, but also those rare, mutated spiritual roots had to be completely destroyed. Otherwise, it would cause a fatal conflict in the body, and the only result would be a sudden death. Long Kiba was dumbfounded. Chung Haonan was also dumbfounded. Even if it was wind, rain, thunder, lightning, or other mutated spiritual roots, they could at least be justified and show the corresponding spiritual root attribute martial arts. But how could he do it? He couldn't say that he had a black spiritual root, right? How could there be such an inexplicable spiritual root in the world? It might be possible to deceive a 3-year-old child, but it was impossible to deceive so many experts present, especially Boundless Sea, who knew their ins and outs. Come on, we won't wrongly accuse a righteous cultivator, and we won't let any evil cultivator go. As long as you can prove that you are not an evil cultivator, Boundless Sea, will kowtow and apologize to you on the spot. Boundless Sea sneered and said eloquently. This time, Long Kiba was completely at a loss of what to do. In this kind of situation, no matter how much he said, it was useless. Only by displaying the fundamental martial techniques could he clear his suspicions. This was a dead end. To be continued, are 655. Chapter 4489. Long Kiba could only helplessly shrug at Chung Haonan. However, before he could say anything, a sharp and terrifying howl suddenly erupted from beside him. Chung Haonan's body suddenly emitted a thick layer of black aura. His state was the same as when he was fighting against Lin Yi. Taking advantage of the fact that no one had any intention of surrounding him, he broke into a run without saying anything. Bang! Chung Haonan wasn't an idiot. He knew that there was no turning back now that the situation had developed to this point. He definitely wouldn't be able to fool everyone today. Once his identity as an evil cultivator was confirmed, he would definitely be surrounded by everyone, let alone the fact that Chung Haonan was currently exhausted. Even if he was at his peak condition, facing the pursuit of so many nascent soul stage experts, he would definitely die without a grave. There wouldn't even be a chance of survival. As a result, his only path of survival was to escape before everyone's killing intent fully manifested. As long as a top-tier expert like Boundless Sea didn't chase after him, he still had a sliver of a chance at survival. Seeing Chung Haonan rush out of the crowd and instantly escape from Magic Cold Plaza, disappearing from everyone's sight, Long Kiba was dumbfounded. Everyone present was dumbfounded as well. They were stunned for a moment before they realized what had happened. F***CK. He was fleeing to avoid punishment. Seeing this, a few cultivators in the periphery hurriedly chased after him. However, most of the people present were indifferent towards this. After all, Chung Haonan's strength was there for all to see. Don't look at how exhausted he was. From the astonishing speed at which he escaped, it could be seen that this guy still had room to struggle on his deathbed. With the strength of most of the people present, let alone the fact that they couldn't catch up to Chung Haonan's speed. Even if they caught up, they definitely wouldn't be able to beat him. In his normal state, Chung Haonan could easily beat the crap out of them, let alone the crazy Chung Haonan who had turned completely black. It was true that the evil cultivator had to be killed, but no one was stupid. They wouldn't throw away their lives just to chase after an evil cultivator. Didn't they see that even a top-tier expert like Boundless Sea had no intention of attacking? With Boundless Sea's strength, of course he could beat Chung Haonan. However, right now was the crucial time to consolidate the fruits of victory. How could he chase after him? What if Xiao Bufan and the others took advantage of them? When he returned, it would be too late. If Boundless Sea didn't chase, Xiao Bufan and the others wouldn't chase either. Boundless Sea was worried about them, but they were also worried about Boundless Sea. Out of all the people present, the only one who could pose a fatal threat to Chung Haonan and have the heart to go after him was probably Lin Yi. However, Lin Yi frowned, suppressing the thought in the end. There was no other way. If he chased after Chung Haonan, no matter if he caught up or not, Boundless Sea would hit him while he was down. He would seize the opportunity to say that he was also an evil cultivator and ran away with Chung Haonan. In the past, no one would have believed this kind of bullshit. But now that Chung Haonan had confessed without being pressed, if Lin Yi couldn't clear his name, it would be the same as having yellow mud falling in his pants. Even if it wasn't shit, it would still be shit. Lin Yi didn't really care. With his background, as long as he spent a bit of time, it wouldn't be hard to clear his name. However, this would definitely implicate the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Regardless of whether or not they could recover their reputation, their hard-earned position as the head of the escort agency would be gone. Perhaps Boundless Sea had purposely tied the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency together for this purpose. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't let him succeed, even though he had made the decision to bide his time. However, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a bit regretful. Even he wasn't completely confident in dealing with an expert evil cultivator like Chung Haonan. This time, not only was his opponent exhausted, he was also injured. This was the perfect opportunity to kill him, but he could only let it go. It was a bit of a pity at this moment. Everyone's gazes fell on Long Kiba. Chung Haonan's sudden escape had pushed him, the head escort of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, into the heart of the struggle. This situation was like Boundless Sea had set up a pot of oil, but Chung Haonan had casually pushed him down. Helpless, wanting to cry, but no tears came out. This was Long Kiba's current situation. It was rare for him to ascend to the throne of the No. 2 Escort Agency, but he hadn't even had the time to sit down properly. He hadn't even had the time to be happy when this throne was swapped with a tiger stool and he had to sit down on it. Long Kiba's current mood was so bad that he couldn't even cry. Under everyone's gazes, Long Kiba sat down on the ground as if he had lost his parents. At this moment, no matter what he said, it was pointless. He couldn't run away like Chung Haonan. After all, he had the entire Dragon Boat Escort Agency behind him. This was the foundation he had painstakingly built up. He couldn't just give it up, so he could only wait for Boundless Sea's verdict. Now, everyone is very clear that Chung Haonan is an evil cultivator. There's no doubt about this. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency actually let an evil cultivator participate in the competition. Where does that leave our Southern Continent Escort Agency alliance? Could it be that our Southern Continent Escort Agency alliance has fallen to this level? Have we fallen to the same level as evil cultivators? Boundless Sea suddenly occupied the moral high ground. In a daze, he seemed to have returned to being the high-spirited tyrant of the escort agency. In the chaotic waters of the Southern Continent, morality was worthless. However, in some special situations, it could be used to kidnap everyone and become a sharp weapon that no one could resist. Boundless Sea clearly understood this well. At this moment, even Zhao Bufan and the others couldn't interrupt. If they followed Boundless Sea's words, they would become his followers. However, if they went against Boundless Sea, they would be openly covering up for an evil cultivator. They couldn't bear such a big label, so they could only turn a blind eye to it. Among the judges, only Qi Mingyuan continued to frown at Boundless Sea coldly. However, he didn't rashly say anything. After all, they were talking about the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. There was no need for him to take the initiative. It wouldn't be too late to counterattack when the other side made trouble. Facing the righteous Boundless Sea, Long Kiba couldn't say anything. Right now, he only regretted one thing. It wasn't allying with the Poison Eye mercenaries, nor letting Wu Baoliang and Chung Haonan participate, but going to the Four Seas Escort Agency to visit Boundless Sea that night. If he hadn't taken the initiative to give Boundless Sea a handle, even if he didn't have the chance to deal with the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, and Ling, even if he couldn't get into the top 5, he could at least retreat unscathed. It was much better than being trampled on like this. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Chapter 4490. So now, the fate of Long Kiba and the entire Dragon Boat Escort Agency was in Boundless Sea's hands. He was the only person who had absolute authority in this situation. Whether the Dragon Boat Escort Agency lived or died depended on his decision. Reading novels on the internet, using an evil cultivator to fight in the ring is an insult to the entire South Continent Escort Bureau Alliance. It's intolerable and unforgivable. Boundless Sea spoke harshly, scaring Long Kiba so much that his hands and feet turned cold. Only then did he announce, "Right now, as the main judge of the conference, I will revoke all of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's results in this competition. However, since you guys aren't evil cultivators and were only deceived by others, we will temporarily retain the qualifications of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. We will see your performance in the next conference." As soon as these words left his mouth, the entire cold magic plaza burst into discussion. As for the ashen-faced Long Kiba, he was overjoyed. He looked at Boundless Sea in disbelief. Only his results were cancelled, and not his name forever. Boundless Sea's previous forceful actions made it seem as if he was going to fight to the death with the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Who would have thought that he would let the Dragon Boat Escort Agency off so easily? This was truly unexpected. Thank you, Chief Judge, for your magnanimity. We were deceived by these two evil cultivators. It was I, the Chief Escort, who failed to recognize people. Our Dragon Boat Escort Agency is willing to accept the punishment. Long Kiba came back to his senses and hurriedly expressed his thanks. This result was already a blessing in disguise for him. It was indeed a pity to lose the second place, but since he had the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to accompany him, it was still somewhat comforting. It wasn't too bad. Can you be more careful and change for the better? It all depends on your performance. Boundless Sea nodded his head, acting like a leader. Looking at this strange scene, Qi Mingyuan could not help but frown. What the hell was this guy trying to do? His intuition told him that Boundless Sea's actions weren't that simple. There had to be a deeper meaning. A stick in one hand and a carrot in the other. Long Kiba and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency were kicked off the stage by him. Yet they still have to be grateful to him. Boundless Sea's methods have reached perfection. Lin Yi smiled faintly from afar. Boundless Sea said it all depended on his future performance. In fact, it was like a sharp sword hanging over Long Kiba's head, forcing him to bow his head. He could only obediently be his underling, or else this sword could fall at any moment. From this point alone, Boundless Sea's methods could be considered brilliant. I just want to know what this guy is up to now. Why did you tie our Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency? The Dragon Boat Escort Agency has evil cultivators, but we don't. Isn't this nonsense? Qi Wenhan was still frowning. Hee, the dagger will be revealed at the end of the map. You'll know when you keep watching. Lin Yi shook his head indifferently. Sure enough, after Boundless Sea successfully grasped the right to speak through the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, he immediately struck while the iron was hot and turned to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. He looked at Qi Mingyuan with malicious intent and said, Chief Escort Qi, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency has already admitted to their crimes. You saw how I dealt with it. You just have to hand over the heretic cultivator and cancel your results. I believe that you're a smart person. Why don't you think about it? Lin Yi was overjoyed. So, this was Boundless Sea's true intention. No wonder he treated the Dragon Boat Escort Agency lightly, apart from making it easier for him to control the agency in the future. Apart from making it easier for him to control the Dragon Boat Escort Agency in the future, this was the more important goal: to split the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. More accurately speaking, it was to split him and Qi Mingyuan. Without a doubt, the evil cultivator that Boundless Sea was talking about was none other than Lin Yi. Think about it. Qi Mingyuan sneered disdainfully. Think about what? Think about whether or not I should listen to your **T. Boundless Sea, you want to tie my Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency together? Don't you think too highly of yourself? You. Boundless Sea suddenly choked. He didn't think that Qi Mingyuan was this domineering before, but now that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had reached the top, he didn't think that Qi Mingyuan would be so overbearing. Qi Mingyuan didn't even put him in his eyes. In the past, if Qi Mingyuan dared to talk to him like this, Boundless Sea would have already stepped on him. As the overlord of the escort agency, he had the confidence to do so. However, things were different now. In name, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was the overlord of the escort agencies. before confirming that he was a heretic cultivator. Boundless Sea couldn't do anything to him. Qi Mingyuan, I'm giving you a way out of this embarrassing situation. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. You used a heretic to cheat and get points. What's there to be arrogant about? Boundless Sea's expression changed. Heretic cultivator? Humph, that's quite a big label. Let me ask you, who in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency is a heretic? Qi Mingyuan sneered. He obviously knew that Boundless Sea was referring to Ling Wan. He didn't dare say anything else, but if someone said that Ling Wan was a heretic like Wu Bao Liang and Cheng Haonan, he wouldn't believe it. Ling Wan, a sinister expression flashed across Boundless Sea's face. He shouted, "You dare say that Ling Wan isn't a heretic?" For a moment, everyone looked at Lin Yi with suspicion and scrutiny. Wu Bao Liang, Cheng Haonan. And this Ling Wan could be said to be the most impressive Golden Core experts in this year's conference. Their strength was enough to make one's hair stand on end. Now that it was proven that the first two were heretics, what about this Ling Wan? This sort of thinking made everyone naturally stand against Lin Yi. Boundless Sea had perfected this move of pushing the boat with the current without leaving a trace. Qi Mingyuan was about to retort, but at this moment, Lin Yi walked out from below the stage. He raised his head and glanced at Boundless Sea. He curled his lips and said, "How can you tell that I'm a heretic?" "Humph, you still want to quibble now. Your moves are the same as Wu Bao Liang's. If you're not a heretic, then what are you? Could it be that we proper cultivators can already use the skills of heretics?" Boundless Sea looked down disdainfully. Everyone present nodded. Evil cultivators and righteous cultivators were two completely different systems. Just like how evil cultivators could not use martial skills of righteous cultivators could not use martial skills of evil cultivators. This was a well-known principle. Although the moves Lin Yi used just now seemed a little different, they were essentially the same as Wu Bao Liang's moves. Boundless Sea's words were indeed very suspicious. "Haha, let me ask you a question first. Did you eat too many retard pills?" Lin Yi smiled and didn't answer. Boundless Sea stared blankly. Even though he didn't know what a retard was, he could tell from Lin Yi's mocking expression that it wasn't anything good. His expression immediately turned ugly. To be continued. Chapter 44, 91. Just because it's the same move, does that mean you're a heretic? That heretic used a normal punch. Does that mean you can't use it? Otherwise, you'll be a heretic too? Lin Yi sneered. Everyone looked at each other. Even though the good and the evil could not coexist, and martial arts could not be used, Lin Yi's explanation was not wrong. Sophistry. One is a normal punch. The other is a proper martial art. Are they the same thing? Boundless Sea exploded with anger. His face was full of murderous intent. Cheng Haonan has already run away. You're not running either. Do you really think our South Continent Escort Agency alliance has fallen to the point of associating with heretics? You don't even know how to write the word death. I don't know how to write the word death. Do you? Lin Yi's expression was completely fearless. It was as if he did not care about Boundless Sea's accusations at all. He even had the mood to ridicule Boundless Sea. Boundless Sea was furious. If he did not care about his status, he would have personally taken the place of the will of heaven. With his shrewdness, he would not lose his composure just because of a few words from Lin Yi. The main reason was that his and the Four Seas Escort Agency's current awkward situation was all caused by Lin Yi. How could he not hate him? Now that there was a rare opportunity to kill Lin Yi to vent his anger, he could not ask for more. However, Boundless Sea did not act impulsively because he did not know what Qi Mingyuan's reaction would be. It would be fine if he just stood by and watched. But what if he attacked to protect Lin Yi? It would be a chaotic battle. The situation would definitely go out of control. That would not benefit Boundless Sea at all. Now that the right to speak was in his hands, he did not want to take such an unnecessary risk. Moreover, if he killed Lin Yi, Qi Mingyuan would insist that he killed him to silence him. That would be troublesome. Humph, no matter what you say, it's useless. This chief judge will not argue with you. Boundless Sea turned to everyone and said loudly, Lin Yi used the same martial art as Wu Bao Liang. It is enough to prove that he is the same as Wu Bao Liang and Cheng Haonan. They are all evil cultivators. Everyone can see this with their own eyes. It is indisputable. He was afraid that something might happen if this continued. The longer the night dragged on, the more dreams could arise. Boundless Sea was prepared to seal his coffin. After all, Lin Yi was different from Wu Bao Liang and Cheng Haonan. He had 30% speculation and 70% slander. He had to strike while the iron was hot. Wait, Qi Wenhan suddenly stepped forward. In a clear voice, he said, Ling Yi is an inner disciple of the 3 big pavilions of the North Island, and he has the mission token of the 3 big pavilions of the North Island. This time, he traveled thousands of miles to the South Continent just to kill the evil cultivator Wu Bao Liang. Let me ask you, how could such a person be an evil cultivator? As soon as he finished speaking, everyone exploded into an uproar, and they couldn't help but discuss animatedly. It turns out that he's a disciple of the 3 pavilions of the North Island. Then he can't be an evil cultivator. Many people immediately nodded. Not bad, although the strength of the North Island is not as good as that of the South Continent. The cohesion is extremely high, and the high level of the 3 pavilions of the North Island is also full of experts. There are even profound ascension stage and even mountain opening stage giants, and they have always considered themselves as a righteous sect. How could this kind of place accept an evil cultivator as a disciple? Those who knew a little more about the North Island were even more convinced. Yes, a place like the North Island can't be compared to our side. We often have evil cultivators here, but the North Island is well governed by the 3 pavilions, let alone their inner disciples. Even the surrounding cultivator tribes don't have any soil for evil cultivators to live in. Everyone agreed. Hearing everyone's discussion, Boundless Sea's expression couldn't help but change. If this continued, it would get out of control. Even he didn't know that Lin Yi was a disciple of the 3 pavilions of the North Island. After all, Lin Yi had only mentioned his background to Qi Wenhan and a few others when he first arrived at the Verdant Arc Sea territory. After that, he never mentioned it again. Even if Boundless Sea sent people to investigate, it wouldn't be easy. You can't say that. Even if Ling Yi is a disciple of the 3 pavilions of the North Island, it doesn't mean that he definitely isn't an evil cultivator. Boundless Sea immediately rejected. Oh, then according to you, Boundless Sea, our South Island Escort Agency alliance wouldn't be in cahoots with evil cultivators. Are you saying that the 3 pavilions of the North Island would actually tolerate evil cultivators? Why don't we write a letter to the North Island and explain your doubts to the higher-ups of the North Island? Qi Mingyuan slanted his eyes and teased. That's not what I meant. Boundless Sea couldn't help but shrink back. Don't look at how he was strutting around the southern continent's waters, looking like an overlord, but compared to the overlords of the Northern Island's 3 great pavilions, he wasn't even worth a fart. Any one of their higher-ups could crush him to death in a matter of minutes. You keep saying that even if he's a disciple of the 3 pavilions of the North Island, it doesn't mean that he isn't an evil cultivator. If that's not what you mean, then what do you mean? Qi Mingyuan's expression was unkind. Humph, according to my investigation, that Wu Bao Liang was once a disciple of the North Island. Since he's an evil cultivator, how can you prove that Ling Yi isn't? Boundless Sea snorted coldly, then added, "This chief judge has always admired the 3 pavilions of the North Island, but for such a huge force like the 3 pavilions, it's normal for 1 or 2 scum to sneak in without noticing. Wu Bao Liang is clear proof." Everyone couldn't help but be surprised. Today's matter was getting more and more interesting. It turned out that even this Wu Bao Liang was a disciple of the 3 pavilions of the North Island. It was really unexpected. "Wait, Boundless Sea, you said you investigated." Qi Mingyuan's eyes suddenly narrowed. "This means that you already knew about Wu Bao Liang's background, but didn't want to stop him as soon as possible. Instead, you sat and watched Wu Bao Liang go up to the arena. Tell me, what's your motive for doing this?" For a moment, everyone's gazes towards Boundless Sea became playful again. Anyone with a quick brain could figure out what was behind this kind of thing. However, as the chief judge of the conference, Boundless Sea kept saying that he was fair and just, but in the end, he still did this kind of thing. That was too hypocritical. In the southern continent sea region, people would worship a bold and ambitious person, but if it was a hypocrite who said one thing in front of others and another behind their backs, that person would be even more despised than a real villain. Boundless Sea suddenly sweated like rain. Just now, all he wanted to do was pull Ling Yi into the water, but he forgot such an obvious flaw. He quickly defended himself. "My previous investigation only found that Wu Bao Liang was a disciple of the 3 pavilions of the North Island. I can't confirm that he's an evil cultivator. In order to avoid wrongly accusing a good person before I have enough evidence, I, as the chief judge of the conference, of course can't casually suspect others." Chapter 44, 92. This was a reasonable explanation, but it was clear from everyone's expressions that they wouldn't believe it so easily. In the southern continent, where conspiracy theories were prevalent, anyone who believed that Boundless Sea didn't have a single bit of selfishness wouldn't be able to survive until now. Since you're so cautious, why are you saying that our Ling Yi is a heretic just because of some groundless nonsense? Below the stage, Qi Wenhan scoffed and sneered. "And your logic doesn't make sense at all. If he and Wu Bao Liang are both evil cultivators who escaped from the 3 pavilions of North Island, then why would they come all the way to this South State Escort Agency event to fight to the death? Do you think everyone is as stupid as you?" Boundless Sea couldn't help but be furious at being mocked by a junior like Qi Wenhan. However, he suppressed his anger and didn't directly attack. He said maliciously, "This is a matter between heretics. If you want to know, you'll have to ask them themselves. If I were to guess, it's most likely because he practices the same mental cultivation method as Wu Bao Liang. So he silenced them to hide his identity as a heretic. You're slandering me." Qi Wenhan was furious. Boundless Sea was determined to convict Ling Yi of being a heretic. He wanted to kill him with just a few words. He was sinister and malicious. "Humph, I think you're the one who's spouting nonsense. You don't even know that a heretic managed to become one of the higher-ups of your escort agency. Even now, you still dare to publicly protect a heretic. Do you really think that our Southern Continent Escort Agency Alliance can't deal with your Heaven's Equal Escort Agency?" Boundless Sea glared at him coldly. Qi Wenhan couldn't hold back his anger anymore. Even his father, Qi Mingyuan, clenched his fists. The entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was united against a common enemy. They just needed to give the order, and they would fight on the spot. Magic Cold Plaza was in a state of panic, as if a storm was brewing. Right at this moment, among the representatives of the Chamber of Commerce beside the judging panel, someone suddenly stood up. He cleared his throat and interrupted in a clear voice. "Can everyone listen to what I have to say?" Everyone's eyes immediately focused on this person. Some sharp-eyed people recognized him at a glance. This person was the newly appointed shopkeeper of the Hong Merchant Association's Arc branch, Honest Chai. As the second largest chamber of commerce in the 5 Great Heaven Stage Islands, the Hong Chamber of Commerce was a force that could not be ignored no matter where it went. Businessmen paid particular attention to harmony and wealth, not to mention the huge financial resources under its command. Just the various forces and relationships it had with it was enough to make anyone fearful. Offending the Hong Chamber of Commerce. It was absolutely not as simple as offending a chamber of commerce. It was practically equivalent to offending a large number of top-notch powers, and there was no lack of super overlords that occupied an island. As a result, even though Honest Chai was just a small branch shopkeeper, his presence here represented the entire Hong Chamber of Commerce. His every word and action represented the Hong Chamber of Commerce's attitude. Even Boundless Sea didn't dare to look down on him. He could only lower himself and fawn over him. After all, including the 4 Seas Escort Agency, more than half of the business of the escort agencies in the South Continent came from these chambers of commerce. The Hong Chamber of Commerce, as one of the most prominent, was their financial backer. If they didn't serve this rich man, well, wouldn't they have nothing to eat in the future? Seeing Honest Chai suddenly stand up, Boundless Sea's heart suddenly thumped. He had a bad premonition, but the symbolic meaning of the other party's identity was too great, so he did not dare to forcefully interrupt him. He could only tactfully say, "Shopkeeper Chai, could I trouble you to wait for a moment? Business matters can wait until we have dealt with our family's scandal. Let's discuss the business in detail after that." Chief Escort High misunderstands. What I want to talk about isn't business. It has to do with young Hero Ling Yi's identity. Honest Chai glanced at Boundless Sea. Without waiting for him to speak, he immediately turned to everyone and announced, "There is something that everyone might not know. I represent the Hong Chamber of Commerce to clarify that young Hero Ling Yi is our Hong Chamber of Commerce's honorary vice chairman." Honorary vice chairman? The crowd erupted once again. Everyone's faces were filled with shock and disbelief. This ordinary-looking Ling Yi was actually the Hong Chamber of Commerce's honorary vice chairman. With this kind of status, no matter where he went, he would be a true big shot. Truly, you can't judge a book by its cover. However, at the same time, everyone had the same question in their hearts. Why would such a big shot run over to fight for the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency? Did he have nothing better to do after eating his fill? The thoughts of big shots were truly unfathomable. While everyone was still in shock, Boundless Sea was completely dumbfounded. In the investigation report on Lin Yi a few days ago, there was no mention of this guy having such a dazzling halo with the status of Hong Chamber of Commerce's honorary vice chairman. Normal people would definitely want the whole world to know about it. But this guy, from start to finish, didn't say a word. It was as if he couldn't see the light of day. F***CK. How could there be such a low-key monster in this world? Everyone, think about it. Our Hong Chamber of Commerce is open for business. How could we let a heretic become our honorary vice chairman? Honest Chai looked at Boundless Sea with an unfriendly gaze. Even though he was a coward, Lin Yi was his benefactor and benefactor. In the future, he would still need to rely on Lin Yi and Hong Zhong's protection. That bastard Boundless Sea actually dared to slander him in front of everyone. If he didn't say a word, then he would really be ungrateful. With this, the situation was completely reversed. Everyone looked at Boundless Sea with doubtful gazes. Previously, when Qi Wenhan had proven that Lin Yi was a disciple of the Northern Island's 3 great pavilions, Boundless Sea could still say that Wu Baoliang was also a disciple of the Northern Island's three great pavilions. But now, Honest Chai had proven that Ling Wan was the Hong Chamber of Commerce's honorary vice chairman. He couldn't say that Wu Baoliang was also the Hong Chamber of Commerce's honorary vice chairman, right? Even if Boundless Sea had 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to make up such a rumor. On the other hand, Lin Yi, seeing Qi Wenhan, Qi Mingyuan, and Honest Chai stand up for him at this crucial moment, not hesitating to shed all pretense of cordiality with Boundless Sea, made him feel gratified. But in reality, even if Qi Wenhan and the others didn't do this, Lin Yi alone was enough to prove himself. The reason why he had remained silent was because the more intense the situation became, the more humiliated Boundless Sea would be. Even though the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency could rise as the old hegemon, the Four Seas Escort Agency's prestige still remained. Right now, Lin Yi wanted to trample on this little bit of prestige and make Boundless Sea the laughingstock of everyone. If that happened, then he wouldn't have any prestige to speak of. And Boundless Sea dared to have crooked ideas against him today. It was destined that he would be humiliated. To be continued. Chapter 44, 93. Ling Yi, although so many people are trying to exonerate you, you use the same martial technique as Wu Baoliang. This is definitely suspicious. If you really want to clear your name, you have to prove in front of everyone that you are not a heretic cultivator. Despite his anger and shock, Boundless Sea could only continue speaking. With a cold expression, he said, "If I can't prove it, then the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's results will be fake and won't count." This was Boundless Sea's current predicament. He had no way out. The other escort agencies were easy to deal with, but if he didn't get rid of Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and let the other side become the overlord of the escort agencies, he wouldn't be able to live a good life in the future. Accusing Lin Yi of being a heretic was something he came up with after watching Lin Yi and Wu Baoliang's match. Honestly speaking, he wasn't very confident, but he couldn't back down now. He had to believe that Lin Yi was a heretic. Sure. Lin Yi smiled faintly. He raised his hand and threw a frenzy fist at the stage under Boundless Sea's feet. The tightly guarded stage shook violently, almost causing Boundless Sea to lose his footing and make a fool of himself. He said calmly, "This is called Frenzy Fist. That move just now is called Thousand Frenzy Fiery Fist. Are you satisfied now?" This time, everyone was in an uproar. The might of the violent flaming thousand bursting fist was too exaggerated, and it was exactly the same as Wu Baoliang's violent sand thousand bursting fist. It was normal for them to have doubts in their hearts, but this violent flaming fist did not require any eyesight to be able to tell that it was a standard fire attribute martial skill. How is this possible? Boundless Sea was going crazy. It didn't matter how many people stood up for Lin Yi. It didn't matter how many halos Lin Yi had around him. He could think of a way to defend himself, even if he couldn't kill Lin Yi and the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency in the end. However, as long as the public still felt suspicious, he would have profited. After all, he didn't need to pay any price. But now, Lin Yi had clearly used a fire-type skill. He used his actions to dispel all suspicions. What else could he do? What's impossible? I'm a cultivator with a fire spirit root. If you still want to say that I'm a heretical cultivator, then don't blame me. Since there are so many people here, they should be the same. Lin Yi said lightly. That's right. Then we're all evil cultivators. I wonder if Chief Escort, Hai, is one of us. Qi Wenhan laughed in agreement. The others also laughed and nodded. Everyone knew that Boundless Sea had been trampled on instead of harming others. He had made a huge fool of himself. Boundless Sea wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He wanted to slap himself in the face. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have been so obsessed with erasing the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Otherwise, with his contribution in reporting the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, not only could the Four Seas Escort Agency return to the ranks of the top 5 escort agencies, but it could also guarantee a certain degree of authority. At that time, Qi Mingyuan would become the new overlord of the escort agency. Because of this, the public did not dare to target him too much. Although he had lost his former prestige, the situation was not too bad. But now, although his Four Seas escort agency had returned to the ranks of the top 5 escort agencies, everyone had seen that he had slandered the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Just this point alone was enough to completely erase the merit he had received for reporting the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. If he wanted to use this merit to make a fuss in the future, he would not be able to do so. Not only would Qi Mingyuan not agree, but even Zhao Bufan and the others wouldn't agree, especially when facing Qi Mingyuan in the future. He would naturally be in the wrong. When Qi Mingyuan stabilized his position as the overlord of the escort agency, who knew how much suffering would be waiting for him. However, even at this point, Boundless Sea still refused to give up. He actually wanted to defend himself and save the situation. However, Qi Mingyuan would not give him any more chances. Chief Escort High, this year's Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference has ended. According to the rules, I should be the judge for this year's conference. Should I be the one to announce the conclusion? Qi Mingyuan laughed and pushed Boundless Sea to the side. Boundless Sea staggered and almost rolled off the stage. Boundless Sea's blood boiled. He could not help but want to explode on the spot. As the overlord of the escort agency for many years, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? However, when he saw Qi Mingyuan's faint smile, as well as the playful gazes of Zhao Bufan and the others, it was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over his head. He could only choose to shut his mouth. There was nothing he could do. These people clearly had unfriendly expressions. It looked like they were waiting for him to make a mistake. If he really did explode on the spot, not only would it be useless, he might even lose his position as one of the top 5 escort agencies. After all, the present was different from the past. His Four Seas escort agency had become a thing of the past. From today onwards, the Southern Continent Escort Agency Alliance had changed. Helpless, Boundless Sea could only swallow his anger and walk to the side, resentfully. It was better to live than to die. Even if he knew that his future wouldn't be good, he wasn't willing to give up his position as one of the 5 great escort agency. Otherwise, if the Four Seas Escort Agency's massive foundation were to shrink in the future, it wouldn't be a joke. It might even fall apart, like Far Pass Escort Agency. Humph! This guy really knows how to endure. Qi Mingyuan glanced at Boundless Sea with some pity. Then, he ignored him and began to read the closing speech to everyone. The closing speech was similar to the previous grand conferences. There was nothing special about it. The only difference was that in the past, it had always been Boundless Sea who read the speech, but now it was Qi Mingyuan who did it. At this moment, looking at the high-spirited Qi Mingyuan on the stage, everyone understood one thing. The Southern Continent Escort Agency Alliance's new era had begun. A new era belonging to the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was born. It didn't matter if the crowd believed it or not. They couldn't change this trend. The era wouldn't change because of their will. Only by adapting to the new era could they ensure that they wouldn't be left behind. Those with a bit of brains quickly realized that in the future, Magic Cold Sea's position as the center of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency would definitely be replaced by Velvet Arc Sea. After all, that was where the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's headquarters were located. If nothing unexpected happened, the next Southern Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference would also be held in Velvet Arc City. It was unlikely that Magic Cold City would ever see such a grand event again. The change of an era came so suddenly that it caught everyone off guard. However, when one thought about it carefully, it seemed to be so reasonable. Too bad we didn't get to take down that bastard Boundless Sea. Chi Wen-han happily watched his father's awe-inspiring appearance on the stage. He couldn't help but look resentfully at Boundless Sea, who had been squeezed to the side. To be continued. Chapter 44-94. This time, Boundless Sea wasn't just targeting Lin Yi, but also the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Now that they had finally taken control of the situation, they didn't know how to deal with this bastard. It was truly annoying. Ha! This guy's a wily old fox. There's no way he'll give himself away in a situation like this. If he's a coward, there's really nothing we can do. Linny nodded, a little regretful. Then we can't just let him go like this, right? Isn't that too easy for this old bastard? Chi Wen-han was still indignant. As long as he doesn't make a mistake, there's nothing we can do about it. Lin Yi smiled helplessly. From this, it was clear that Boundless Sea was a wily old fox. Even though he was clearly targeting him and the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, he kept saying that he was doing it for the sake of justice. Even if he made a mistake, there was no way to criticize him. No, I can't take this lying down. I have to think of the fastest way to get back at him. Chi Wen-han stared at Boundless Sea and swore to himself. He wouldn't repay evil with good. That was the style of a hypocrite. Vengeance for vengeance was his personality. He was a man of true character. Brother Chi, you don't need to be so angry. Right now, you're not suitable to deal with someone like Boundless Sea. You're not high enough either. It'll be easy for people to gossip. Let's leave this matter to head Escort Chi. I trust that he won't disappoint us. Lin Yi advised with a smile. This was the truth. Boundless Sea excelled at putting on airs. There were only two ways to deal with this type of person. Either your absolute strength was much stronger than him, just like those high and mighty East Continent academies that disregarded the rules and could easily crush him, or you could fight poison with poison and use the same method to force him to reveal his flaws. Other than that, it would be very difficult to gain the upper hand with any simple and crude method. For Chi Wen-han, he clearly couldn't do either of these two methods. In comparison, his father Chi Mingyuan might be able to do the second. After all, he was an ambitious and ruthless character. His shrewdness were much deeper than his hot-blooded young master. With his current position as the head of the escort agency, dealing with Boundless Sea shouldn't be a problem. That's true. Dad is much better than me in this aspect. Only then did Chi Wen-han dispel the idea. Professional matters should be left to professionals. If he rashly interfered, it would only ruin things. It was not that he did not understand this principle. After Chi Mingyuan finished reading the closing speech, the 3-day event of the South Continent Escort Agency finally came to an end. The people who came from all over to watch the event dispersed. The various legendary events that happened in this event would certainly be spread throughout the South Continent Sea through their mouths. It was foreseeable that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and Ling Yi's name would inevitably become the topic of conversation after a meal. Ling Yi would become a legend in the Southern Continent Sea, and the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency behind him would usher in a new era. After the meeting ended, the first thing everyone in the Equal Heaven Escort Agency wanted to do was celebrate. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had historically become the overlord of the South Continent Escort Agency. Everyone, from the chief escort Chi Mingyuan to the ordinary little escorts, felt as if they were in a dream. After the event ended, the thing they did the most was to pinch themselves as hard as they could. The more it hurt, the happier they were, looking at this group of people who seemed to have some sort of mental illness. Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. although even he did not expect to achieve such amazing results. He was an outsider after all. Even if he had obtained first place, it was not a big deal. If one was not from the South Continent Sea, they would not be able to truly understand the great significance this represented. However, this did not prevent Lin Yi from becoming the protagonist of the victory party. It could be said that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's current achievements were all thanks to Lin Yi. Apart from dealing with Wu Baoliang, Lin Yi had originally wanted to be an external helper in the South Continent Escort Agency's grand meeting and help out a little when necessary. In the end, he did not expect to become the main force. More than 80% of the points obtained by the agency were directly or indirectly related to him. If one were to compare it to a battlefield, Lin Yi would have simply raised his blade and chopped through the enemy's commander and his minions, killing his way through the enemy's ranks all on his own. As the greatest contributor, Lin Yi was naturally the focus of the victory party. Everyone in the Heavens Equal Escort Agency came to toast him one by one. As for Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, apart from expressing their gratitude, they also announced a major event that could change the fate of the entire Heavens Equal Escort Agency. The father and son decided to gift 20% of the entire Heavens Equal Escort Agency's assets to Lin Yi unconditionally in the form of shares. When the words came out of Qi Mingyuan's mouth, even the originally lively celebration couldn't help but become silent for a moment. Everyone was stunned for a long time before they finally reacted. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with admiration and respect as they looked at Lin Yi. Before this, Lin Yi was the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's benefactor. He was the agency's eternal honorary head. Although everyone was in awe of him, they did not feel any pressure from Lin Yi. After all, the honorary head was still an outsider. However, things were different now. After receiving 20% of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's shares, Lin Yi was no longer an outsider to everyone. He had become the third owner of the escort agency after Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan. Not only was everyone shocked speechless, but even Lin Yi himself could not help but be a little stunned when he heard this. He looked at Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan in confusion. Why did they suddenly think of giving him 20% of the shares? How could I accept this? Lin Yi reacted and hurriedly refused. If it was just spirit jades, he could even accept a few 100,000 spirit jades. After all, he had already made up his mind to refine a batch of pills for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. He would not let them suffer any losses. However, 20% of the shares was a completely different matter, not to mention the fact that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was bound to soar into the sky in the future. Even before this, 20% of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency shares was an astronomical figure. After all, this was one of the top 5 escort agencies. 20% of the shares would be worth at least 1 million spirit jades. In time, this figure would skyrocket. Brother Ling, don't be in such a hurry to refuse. This is the decision that my father, Uncle Song, and I have come to after discussing it. It is the result of careful consideration and is not an impulsive decision. This is a good thing for both of us, Qi Wenhan said with a smile as he put an arm around Lin Yi's shoulder. Our 1152 latest update. Please read. Chapter 44, 95. That's right. With young Hero Ling's great contributions, if we really want to thank you properly, even 1 million spiritual jades would be far from enough. However, the escort agency is in dire need of spiritual jades right now, and we won't be able to gather so many spiritual jades in a short period of time. Rather than forcing it, why don't we just let young Hero Ling truly become a part of the escort agency? Otherwise, the title of honorary escort leader would be somewhat undeserved, Qi Mingyuan advised sincerely. Head escort leader, Brother Qi, you're treating me like an outsider. With our friendship, Is there really a need for so many benefits? Furthermore, the reason I fought for the agency this time was because of Wu Baoliang. Now that Wu Baoliang has been beheaded, I can also retire after completing my mission. You really don't have to do this. Lin Yi shook his head repeatedly. Young Hero Ling, everyone knows that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency relied on your own strength to ascend to the position of hegemon of the escort agency. This is no longer just about you. It concerns the entire agency's reputation. If we mistreat you, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency will be ridiculed behind our backs. Qi Mingyuan's face turned serious, and he continued, Furthermore, young Hero Ling, we're only giving you 20% of the shares. Not only can we get closer to each other, but it also won't cause the agency to suffer any losses. At this point, Lin Yi didn't know how to refuse. He couldn't possibly disregard the reputation of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and forcefully reject the 20% shares. Could he? Lin Yi could remain unscathed by doing this, but it would be troublesome for Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan. After all, they had to thank Lin Yi heavily this time. If Lin Yi didn't accept the shares, they could only give him spiritual jades. However, the problem was that they didn't have that many spiritual jades. After all, Lin Yi wasn't a stubborn person. He wouldn't put his friends in such an awkward situation. Furthermore, just as Qi Mingyuan said, even if he accepted the 20% shares, as long as he didn't touch them and didn't actively participate in the agency's decision-making, he wouldn't let the agency suffer any losses. It was the best of both worlds. All right then, but I have to make something clear. I can accept this 20% share, but I want to hand it over to Brother Qi. After all, I won't be staying in the South Continent for too long, and I won't be able to participate in the affairs of the escort agency in the future, Lin Yi said helplessly. Well said, well said. Come, let's raise our glasses. To the new owner of our escort agency. Qi Mingyuan was overjoyed and immediately asked everyone to toast. The atmosphere became warm again. When Qi Wenhan first proposed to give Lin Yi 20% of the firm's shares, he was still a little worried that Lin Yi would take advantage of the situation. Losing some spiritual jades was not a big deal, but the key was that he would not be able to escape when the time came, and it would affect the decision-making of the escort agency, which would be troublesome. However, now that Lin Yi had expressed his intention to return the favor, his worries immediately vanished. 20% of the shares were handed over to Qi Wenhan for full custody. Furthermore, he had made it clear that he would not be involved in the affairs of the escort agency. This meant that Lin Yi would only be a boss who did not have to do anything in the future. As long as he paid his dividends regularly, everything would be fine. This was the best outcome for the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Not only did they not have to lose anything, but they could also further bind Lin Yi. Not to mention Lin Yi's various magical abilities, just the Hong Chamber of Commerce behind him was enough to greatly benefit the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. After all, now was the time for the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to take advantage of the situation, and Lin Yi was backed by the rich and powerful Hong Chamber of Commerce. Even the gale that could allow it to soar up 90,000 miles in one go was the only reward. The 20% of the firm's shares he gave out was already more than worth it. Since everyone is so generous, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, Lin Yi raised his glass and drained it in one gulp. At this moment, a few people suddenly entered the hall. Ignoring the strange looks from the crowd, the leader of the group walked up to Lin Yi with a hearty laugh and said, "Chief Escort Qi, young Hero Ling Yi, it's rare for everyone to be in such a good mood. Can you count me in?" This person was the chief escort of the Black Eagle Escort Agency, Zhao Shanning. The few people behind him were also the core members of the Black Eagle Escort Agency. "Ha! Chief Escort, Zhao is a rare guest. Of course, we welcome you with open arms." Qi Mingyuan immediately laughed. He did not have to think too much to guess the purpose of Zhao Shannying and the others' visit. This fellow was here to express his goodwill. The new structure of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance was very clear. The 5 major escort agencies were led by the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, followed by the Divine Wind Escort Agency, the Great Heaven Escort Agency, the Black Eagle Escort Agency, and the Four Seas Escort Agency. Among them, the one with the most authority was undoubtedly the new hegemon, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Among the remaining escort agencies, the Divine Wind Escort Agency, the Great Heaven Escort Agency, and the Four Seas Escort Agency were all old and powerful. Only the Black Eagle Escort Agency was newly promoted. It was difficult for it to do so alone. Once it was ostracized by the other agencies, it might not be able to reap any significant benefits, even if it were to become one of the 5 major escort agencies. Under such circumstances, Zhao Shannying had to find a strong ally. In Zhao Shannying's mind, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was the best choice. Firstly, this ally was the new hegemon of the escort agencies, which was definitely worthy of the word strong. Secondly, the other party was also a new force, and there was a big gap between it and the other traditional and powerful forces. If the Heavens Equal Escort Agency wanted to achieve great things, it would definitely need a reliable ally that could coordinate with it. The Black Eagle Escort Agency just happened to fit this position. Therefore, in the eyes of both Qi Mingyuan and Zhao Shannying, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and the Black Eagle Escort Agency were getting closer. Therefore, Zhao Shannying took advantage of this victory party to come and support them. Qi Mingyuan, on the other hand, welcomed him with a smile and did not refuse anyone. As an ambitious and ruthless person, Zhao Shannying naturally had a cruel and merciless side to him. However, in front of Lin Yi and the others, he appeared to be smooth and slick. With his forthright style, he managed to get closer to everyone with just a few words. However, the person he praised the most during the party was not Qi Mingyuan, the chief escort agency. Instead, it was Lin Yi who had left a deep impression on him. Heroes appreciated each other, and Zhao Shannying could be said to hold Lin Yi in high esteem. If not for his interest in Lin Yi, given his status as the chief escort of the Black Eagle Escort Agency, he would not have been willing to lower himself to personally support the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, even if he wanted to form an alliance with the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Of course, apart from his admiration for Lin Yi, Zhao Shannying did not know if there was any deeper meaning in his heart. At least, as far as Lin Yi was concerned, he did not believe that an ambitious and ruthless person like Zhao Shannying would be a simple fan of his idol. It would be more accurate to say that Zhao Shannying was trying to kill Lin Yi through flattery. According to his speculation, when Zhao Shannying approached the Heavens Equal Escort Agency this time, it was not as if he did not intend to use the opportunity to drive a wedge between himself and the Qi father and son. The words "one's achievements are enough" to cause a fatal knot in the hearts of both parties. However, the relationship between Lin Yi and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was not something that outsiders could understand. To be continued. Chapter 4496. Besides, it was still unknown whether Zhao Shannying had such an intention. Maybe this guy also had a sentimental side, and he simply admired Lin Yi. The celebration ended with both the host and the guest enjoying themselves. After everyone left, Lin Yi noticed that Qi Mingyuan and Zhao Shannying deliberately found a private room to talk by candlelight. Obviously, they wanted to finalize the future cooperation between the two escort agencies. This was a major event that could affect the entire Southland Escort Agency Alliance, but it had nothing to do with Lin Yi. As he said, he had no interest in interfering in the affairs of the escort agencies. The Southland Escort Agency Alliance Conference was over, but the escort agencies did not disperse. On the contrary, it was a critical moment for the people in charge of the escort agencies. According to the previous rules, the Southland Escort Agency Alliance Conference would be held tomorrow. At this conference, representatives of hundreds of chambers of commerce in the Southland Sea would participate, and a large number of orders would be finalized at tomorrow's conference. This was a feast to divide the fruits of victory. The higher the ranking of the escort agency, the more benefits it would get. There was no doubt that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency would be the biggest winner. But all of this had nothing to do with Lin Yi. The only thing he had to do now was to conserve his energy and wait for his return to the North Island. Of course, according to Lin Yi's character, he could not stay idle. Even if he only had one night, he would concentrate on cultivation and try to break through. At the same time, in another high end and across the street from the inn where the Heavens Equal Escort Agency stayed, in an elegant room, Long Kiba was drinking alone to drown his sorrows. His face was full of depression. He could not help but be depressed in the same room. The night before, he was drinking with Chung Haonan and Wu Bao Liang, imagining the beautiful future of trampling over the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and becoming the hegemon of the escort agency. It had only been a day, but things had changed. Chung Haonan and Wu Bao Liang's identity as evil cultivators had been exposed in public. But now, the second place that his Dragon Boat Escort Agency had worked so hard to get was canceled on the spot, and he even wondered if he could continue to stay in the Southland Escort Agency Alliance. Long Kiba felt so melancholic that he wanted to cry, but no tears came out when he thought of the loot-splitting meeting that was going to be held the next day. He was already in a trance. The window opened, and a gust of cold wind blew in. Long Kiba, who was dizzy, couldn't help but shiver. He subconsciously wanted to get up and close the window. However, when he noticed the figure that suddenly appeared beside him, he was shocked. His drunkenness was instantly gone, and he quickly shouted, "Who? What a forgetful person! Chief Escort Long, you don't even recognize me anymore?" Chung Haonan's appearance finally became clearer in Long Kiba's eyes. "Ah, it's you." Long Kiba couldn't help but be surprised. As the evil cultivator that was exposed by Boundless Sea, Chung Haonan was definitely a street rat that everyone in Demon Lung City wanted to beat up. If it was someone else, they would have fled in the middle of the night. She didn't expect him to stay here and even dare to come back to find her. "What? Chief Escort Long, don't tell me you don't welcome me?" Chung Haonan looked at Long Kiba with a smile that wasn't a smile. He sat down, poured himself a glass of wine, and calmly drank it. "How could that be? Deputy Chief Escort Chung, you're thinking too much." Long Kiba subconsciously looked out the window again. After confirming that no one noticed, he sat back down. He smiled bitterly at Chung Haonan and said, "I knew that you were an evil cultivator. A real man doesn't bother with trifles. Righteous and evil cultivators just have different methods. I'm not a hypocrite who sticks to tradition. Now that this bullshit happened, it's all because that old man Boundless Sea didn't keep his word. Why would I blame you?" "That's good. Chief Escort Long is indeed someone who makes friends. I wasn't wrong about you." Chung Haonan nodded his head, and then sighed bitterly. It was originally going to be a success. It's all Boundless Sea and Ling Yi's fault. It was all for naught. Yeah, Boundless Sea, Ling Yi, it's all because of those two. Speaking of this, Long Kiba gritted his teeth in anger. If it wasn't for Boundless Sea's betrayal, this wouldn't have happened. But if it wasn't for Ling Yi, Deputy Chief Escort, Chung wouldn't have been forced to use that black transformation. That way, at most, Boundless Sea would think that the dead Wu Bao Liang was an evil cultivator, and it wouldn't be linked to Deputy Chief Escort Chung. That's right. In any case, Wu Bao Liang is dead. Dead men tell no tales. As long as we don't admit it, it doesn't matter how Boundless Sea accuses us. But after being forced by Ling Yi, I was dragged into this as well. How preposterous! As Chung Haonan spoke, he drank 3 glasses in a row. With a sinister and cold smile, he said, "Boundless Sea deserves to die. This Ling Yi deserves to die even more. I definitely won't let them go. Oh, could it be that Deputy Chief Escort Chung has a brilliant plan?" Hearing this, Long Kiba immediately became spirited. Hearing Chung Haonan's tone, it didn't seem as simple as just complaining. It seemed like he had a plan, although he wasn't as miserable as Chung Haonan in terms of hatred towards Ling Yi and Boundless Sea. Long Kiba wasn't any less than Chung Haonan. After all, the reason why his dragon boat escort agency had fallen into such a dangerous state was because of these 2 people. This was the foundation of his entire life's work. If you want to ask, I really do have a brilliant plan. Chung Haonan smiled, pretending to be profound. Hurry up and tell me. Long Kiba hurriedly asked impatiently. My brilliant plan is actually very simple. As long as one person takes action, whether it's Ling Yi or Boundless Sea, they will definitely die. Chung Haonan proudly took a sip of wine. Who? Long Kiba's eyes lit up. Wu Bao Liang. Chung Haonan glanced at him and slowly spat out these 3 words. What? Wu Bao Liang? Isn't he already dead? Long Kiba was suddenly stunned. In the arena ruins during the day, Wu Bao Liang clearly died. His entire body was burnt to a crisp by Ling Yi's berserk Fire Thousand Burst Fist. It was clear that he couldn't be more dead. Could he still be resurrected like that? Long Kiba thought about it and found it hard to believe. However, he wasn't a heretic. Perhaps a heretic's martial art really had this kind of heaven-defying skill that could resurrect the dead. That's right, he really is dead. Chung Haonan's words dispelled Long Kiba's unrealistic conjecture. He coldly smiled and said, But even if he's dead, it's still useful. Why do you say that? Long Kiba was stunned after hearing this. He couldn't help but be confused. What's the use? Chapter 4497. Because we are going to train together. I have been very close to Wu Bao Liang in the past few years. I know everything about him. Chung Haonan smiled proudly and said, He once told me that he had a master who was extremely powerful. The evil cultivation method that he practiced was personally taught to him by his master. Now that his disciple has died by Ling Yi's hands, if his master were to find out about this, do you think he would let the matter rest? That's definitely not possible. Long Kiba suddenly became excited. He rubbed his hands and said, if it was just an ordinary registered disciple, it might not be a big deal. But since Wu Bao Liang's cultivation method was personally taught by his master, he is a personal disciple. His status is the same as his own son. After knowing about this, he will definitely go crazy. That's right. Chung Haonan nodded. If his son, Chung Katian, died, he would go crazy. Now that Wu Bao Liang was dead, his master would be the same. So, Deputy Chief Chung plans to look for Wu Bao Liang's master? Long Kiba asked. Wrong, not planning, but already looking for him. Chung Haonan smiled proudly. Ah, so fast. Isn't Ling Yi dead, for sure? Long Kiba could not help but be overjoyed. At the same time, he was shocked by Chung Haonan's efficiency. It had only been a few hours since they were chased, and this guy had already contacted Wu Bao Liang's master. It could be seen how urgent his desire for revenge was. Of course, Wu Bao Liang's master is a real demon. Even among the evil cultivators, he is a fierce and outstanding existence. Don't think that Wu Baoliang is already very strong, but in front of his master, this strength is not even worth mentioning. Even a profound ascending stage master can only die if he meets him. As long as he is willing to take action, even 100 Ling Yis will die. He he he. Chung Haonan nodded with certainty and grinned. The reason why he took the risk to stay in Devil Lung City was to wait for Wu Baoliang's master to come. When the time comes, he will be able to take revenge with his own hands. Even a profound ascending stage master can't compete with him. That's great. Long Kiba was overjoyed. Although the southern continent sea was chaotic, it was not the core area of the heavenly stage island after all. Although all kinds of strong people were tyrannical, there were very few who could be regarded as top experts. A profound ascending stage expert could do whatever he wanted, let alone an existence that even a profound ascending stage expert could not contend against. At first, Long Kiba was worried that Wu Baoliang's master was not strong enough. After all, he was a heretic cultivator. If he did not have enough strength, once he was besieged, he would die. However, after listening to Chung Haonan's words, there was nothing to worry about. Boundless Sea is despicable and shameless. He's the main culprit behind all of this. Should we ask this expert to kill him as well? Long Kiba immediately asked. To be honest, his hatred for Boundless Sea was even greater than that for Lin Yi. After all, Lin Yi only killed Wu Baoliang, but Boundless Sea destroyed his entire dragon boat escort agency. Then forget it. Boundless Sea is our own enemy. It's a bit far-fetched to link him with Wu Baoliang's death. Wu Baoliang's master may not listen to us. Chung Haonan shook his head and said with fear, if this expert thinks that we are using him, then it won't be good. Well, that's true. Anyway, with an expert backing us, Boundless Sea won't dare to do anything to us. There will be opportunities to deal with him in the future. Long Kiba nodded with some regret, but he did not dwell on this matter. He changed the topic and asked, when will this expert come? It should be soon. If I'm not mistaken, he will arrive here tomorrow. Chung Haonan smiled proudly. So fast? Could it be that this expert is in the southern continent sea? Long Kiba couldn't help but be shocked again. He looked at Chung Haonan with a burning gaze. He originally didn't have any expectations for tomorrow's South Continent Escort Agency Alliance conference. But if it really happened tomorrow, it would be a different story. If it dragged on until tomorrow, even if he could kill Ling One to regain his face, at least his dragon boat escort agency would not be able to get any orders, because most of the orders in the southern continent sea would be divided up tomorrow. With the dragon boat escort agency's current awkward position, let alone getting meat, even getting soup was an extravagant dream. They could only starve. However, if Wu Baoliang's master came fast enough and completed the counterattack before the orders were finalized tomorrow, the situation would be different. That's not it. But according to Wu Baoliang, the location is not far from the southern continent sea. I was able to contact him so quickly this time because of a special internal method. When Wu Baoliang came to my place, he was afraid of being hunted down by the people from the 3 pavilions, so he told me in advance that if anything happened to him, I could use this secret method to inform his master. It was originally just a precaution, but now it has come in handy, Chung Haonan explained. Good, that's great. Long Kiba nodded happily. His original gloominess and melancholy were swept away, and he became excited again. He grinned and said, Motherf asterisk Kerr, the root of this mess is this Ling One. If not for him, we would not have gone to find Boundless Sea for help, and we would not have given him a handle. Now we can finally take revenge. That's right, this brat must die. If I don't kill him with my own hands tomorrow, Chung Haonan, am not a man," Chung Haonan said, hatefully. In fact, if it weren't for the duel in the arena during the day, he still had great confidence in killing Lin Yi. It was just that Lin Yi's fall from the arena made him lose the chance. Otherwise, if he could ignore the rules and chase Lin Yi at will, he would already be a cold corpse by now. However, this regret could be made up for when Wu Baoliang's master arrived tomorrow. Ha! That brat is destined to be a dead man. For tomorrow's revenge, let's cheers. Long Kiba laughed proudly. That's right, cheers. Chung Haonan also laughed loudly. While these two people were celebrating in advance, Lin Yi, who was a thorn in their side and was listed as a must-kill target, was currently in his room concentrating on breaking through. In fact, during the day, he had already faintly touched the barrier of breaking through. Although he had not been stuck in the middle stage of the Golden Core stage for a long time, he was, after all, a Golden Core stage expert who had a perfect breakthrough. Breaking through was far less difficult than ordinary Golden Core stage experts. Basically, as long as the concept was there, breaking through would be a matter of time. After fighting with Wu Baoliang 3 times in a row and fighting with the more powerful Chung Haonan, Lin Yi had clearly entered this indescribable state. Our 1152. Chapter 44-98. The stronger the opponent, the stronger the opponent. This was Lin Yi's usual style. After facing a strong opponent who suppressed him in all aspects, under the huge pressure, a breakthrough became a matter of course. However, the only regret was that Chung Haonan did not choose to continue the challenge. While the pressure on Lin Yi disappeared, he also lost the feeling of a breakthrough. This was a pity. Otherwise, if Chung Haonan continued to challenge, although Lin Yi might not be his opponent, it was very likely that he would have a breakthrough during the battle. That would be a different situation. Of course, although it was a pity that he could not break through and advance in one go, it was not completely irreparable. Since he had brushed past the feeling of a breakthrough during the day, it was very simple for Lin Yi. He just had to find a way to get it back. After all, this kind of thing seemed a bit mysterious, but it was still traceable. Lin Yi clearly remembered that when this concept first appeared, it was the first time he was knocked out of the arena by Wu Baoliang, and his mind was simulating the raging flame Thousand Bursts fist. At that time, he was only thinking about how to defeat Wu Baoliang, so he didn't pay much attention to it. But now that he thought about it, this feeling was very real. In other words, as long as he deduced the powerful and oppressive finishing move again, he could induce the fighting spirit in his body, and he would not be far from breaking through. Lin Yi was at least 60% sure of this, so he immediately tried it without hesitation. However, it was meaningless to deduce the Thousand Violent Fire fist now. After all, this was a move that he had completely mastered. For Lin Yi, there was no pressure at all. Naturally, there would not be that kind of feeling of a breakthrough under pressure. The scene of the battle during the day kept rolling in his mind. This time, Lin Yi was not locked onto Wu Baoliang's Thousand Violent Sand Fist, but Chung Haonan's whole body turning black. Although Chung Haonan was good at ordinary punches and kicks, and he did not have a powerful killing move like the Thousand Violent Sand Fist, the scene of his strength skyrocketing after his whole body turning black left a deep impression on Lin Yi. Strictly speaking, the blackening of the entire body could not be considered a move, but a state that was even more unsolvable than the Thousand Wild Sand Bursting Fist, because he couldn't experience it firsthand like the Thousand Sand Bursting Fist, and he didn't face it many times like Wu Baoliang. Lin Yi didn't have a deep understanding of Chung Haonan's blackened body, and it was much more difficult to simulate it. Moreover, this state itself was much more complicated than a simple ultimate move, like the Thousand Sand Bursting Fist. If one wanted to successfully deduce a move, at the very least, one of the prerequisites was to grasp the essence of the move. For example, if Lin Yi didn't know the principle behind the 1,000 heavy explosions of the Wild Sand 1,000 bursting fist, he wouldn't have thought of using fire crystals as a replacement. Naturally, there wouldn't be the Wild Fire 1,000 bursting fist. However, Chung Haonan's true blackness only lasted for a short moment. It was easier said than done to grasp the essence of it, over and over again. The scene of the battle with Chung Haonan during the day played in Lin Yi's mind like a movie. He kept repeating it, including Chung Haonan's movements, reactions, and the aura he exuded. He did not miss any detail on the stage. Only by doing this could he find some clues. Previously, when deducing Wu Bao Liang's 1,000 wild sand bursting fist, Lin Yi used less than the time it took for a stick of incense to roughly reconstruct his own wildfire 1,000 bursting fist. However, this time, he spent most of the night deducing Chung Haonan's blackening state, but he still couldn't grasp the essence. Could that move really be so invulnerable? Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. With his super strong perception, he couldn't even see a single clue. It was really strange. Suddenly, an idea flashed in Lin Yi's mind. No, the key was not after Chung Haonan's blackening state, but before his blackening state. Although there was a huge gap in strength, whether it was before or after his entire body darkened, Chung Haonan's combat essence had not changed at all. He was still using ordinary punches and kicks. The only difference was that his power and speed had skyrocketed. In other words, as long as he could understand Chung Haonan's ordinary punches and kicks, he could take advantage of the situation and understand his blackening state. The two were actually of the same origin. After figuring this out, the difficulty of deducing suddenly decreased a lot. Although Chung Haonan's blackening state only lasted for a moment, Lin Yi had a deep understanding of ordinary punches and kicks. After all, he had been in a stalemate with Chung Haonan for a long time and suffered a lot. Each of Chung Haonan's punches and kicks turned over in his mind. The true qi in Lin Yi's body couldn't help but become a little restless. This was not a simple perception, but a fusion of a part of the perception. To some extent, the perception was more reliable than the perception. It felt more real, and the effect was naturally better. Although it was not clear how Chung Haonan did it, Lin Yi had already faintly entered a new realm, a brand new realm of physical techniques. Unlike martial arts, the foundation of martial arts lay in true qi, while the foundation of physical techniques lay in the body. In fact, it was somewhat similar to the physical experts in the secular world. Looking at the current cultivation world, including the 5 great islands of the heaven rank, martial skills ran rampant in the world. No matter what level the duel was, it would usually end with the exchange of a few powerful martial skills. Very few people still persisted in using physical skills. Of course, most of these people were former physical cultivators. After all, apart from a freak like Chung Haonan, the majority of people would not focus on cultivating body arts. That was because it required a long period of time and effort. Most importantly, the results of cultivation were far inferior to the rapid improvement of martial arts. Spending the same amount of time to practice a martial art would be enough to increase one's combat power by 10 points. However, if it was used on physical techniques, the combat power might only increase by 1 point, or even less. With such a big difference, it was obvious which one a normal person would choose. Slow improvement was the biggest disadvantage of physical techniques, but at the same time, it had an absolute advantage that no other martial arts could compare to. As long as one persisted in practicing, the power of physical techniques could be improved infinitely. No matter how powerful a martial art seemed at the moment, it was still limited by the realm of strength. After reaching a certain level, it could not be improved any further. Even if one could continue to practice the subsequent moves, the improvement would be minimal far from being able to keep up with the new realm. Therefore, one could only practice an even more powerful martial art and start from the beginning. However, physical techniques were different. Until now, no one had heard of anyone reaching the upper limit of physical techniques. If one continued to practice, they would explode and die. This kind of thing was basically impossible. Our 1152. Chapter 44, 99. In other words, as long as one persisted, from an ordinary person to the gold course stage, the nascent soul stage, the profound ascension stage, or even the superior mountain opening stage, one could always use physical skills to fight against the enemy because of its endless potential. But the process was also extremely difficult. But as long as one persisted in practicing diligently, he would never fall behind. In general, in the same realm, the physical masters who were good at physical skills were often stronger than the internal masters who were good at martial arts, because the physical masters were bound to cultivate both internal and external. Above the heaven stage, it was impossible to advance only by cultivating external skills. So those who could persist in cultivating both internal and external skills were not ordinary ruthless people. For a long time, Lin Yi was a master of internal skills, and all kinds of trump cards and killing moves belonged to the category of internal martial arts, which was inevitable. After all, compared to other masters of the same level, his practice time was really too short. From the beginning to the present, a total of less than 3 years had passed, which was simply negligible for cultivators. But in the cultivation of physical skills, no matter how talented one was, the most important point was that a large amount of time was needed. This was an objective fact that no one could avoid. There was no shortcut for physical skills. This was a widely recognized view, and Lin Yi had always thought so before. But after today's fight with Chung Haonan, he suddenly realized that although this view was still correct, it was not so absolute. Everything had a skill, even the simplest action had a corresponding trick. And physical skills were naturally no exception. As long as one could master the essence of it, it was not impossible to get twice the result with half the effort. Lin Yi believed. The reason why Chung Haonan's physical skills were so powerful was not only because he spent a lot of time on it, but also because he had mastered the trick that others could not, bringing true qi into physical skills. It was actually not difficult to mix ordinary punches and kicks with true qi. Any practitioner could easily do it, but that was the extent of it. Although it was mixed together, punches and kicks were still punches, and true qi was still true qi. Not only could the power of the two not be superimposed, but they would also consume each other. The loss outweighed the gain. But in Chung Haonan's body, there was no sign of consumption. On the contrary, every punch and every kick only carried a little bit of true qi. However, it caused the might of his fists and legs to multiply, and it was even to the extent that it was sufficient to contend head-on with ordinary martial techniques. Such a method that cultivated both internal and external techniques could truly be said to be marvelous. Although Lin Yi hadn't studied physical skills for a long time, and he didn't have much attainment in the past, he was an assassin, so his physical talent was definitely outstanding. Secondly, he was very familiar with the control of true qi. With these two conditions put together, it wasn't impossible for him to learn Chung Haonan's super strong physical skills, even if he couldn't reach Chung Haonan's level in a short period of time. But as far as Lin Yi was concerned, it wasn't a pipe dream to multiply his physical strength by a couple of times, just like what was happening right now. After countless deductions, he had already begun to enter a brand new realm of body technique. So that's how it is. The root of that guy's strong physical skills is that he can use his true qi to instantly stimulate the vitality of his cells, which causes his physical strength to skyrocket in an instant. Lin Yi suddenly let out a long breath. After figuring this out, his spirit was immediately lifted. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Although he's a scum through and through in terms of physical skills, he's a true genius. That guy can really be considered a genius. As a native of Heaven Stage Island, Chung Haonan certainly didn't know the word cell. His understanding of the human body was far less scientific than that of the secular world. Even so, he still managed to do it despite being ignorant of all this. This had to be said to be a miracle. Stimulating the vitality of cells in an instant was not uncommon in scientific research in the secular world, but in Heaven Stage Island, it was really rare. The key was that Chung Haonan not only thought of doing this, but also really did it. The technical content of this was not just a little bit or two. The more powerful the cultivator, the stronger their physical body, and the more powerful the cell vitality. But this didn't mean that it could be easily stimulated with true qi. If the stimulation was too small, there would be no effect. If the stimulation was too strong, then it wouldn't be called stimulating the cell vitality, but killing a large number of cells. Success or failure depended on whether one could accurately grasp this degree. Lin Yi didn't know how Chung Haonan, who knew nothing about cells, could do this, but at least he was sure that this process must be very difficult. Even with Lin Yi's insanely high talent, comprehension, and the fact that Chung Haonan was a ready-made example, it took him a good half a night to finally get the hang of it. He'd made himself cough up blood a couple of times before finally getting the hang of it. He'd finally gotten the basics of this new body art. Since this is the principle of the superphysical skill, then Chung Haonan's blackened state should be the extreme stimulation. Lin Yi was very excited in his heart. If the normal state of the superphysical skill was the most suitable intensity of stimulation for the physical cells, then the intensity of stimulation in Chung Haonan's blackened state should be the limit of stimulation that his physical cells could withstand. Once this limit was exceeded, the physical cells would be directly killed by the true qi. In fact, even if this limit was not exceeded, after the extreme stimulation, a large number of cells would die due to overdraft of vitality, which meant that they would suffer a certain degree of internal injury. This was the price that must be paid for a moment of strength. One was the superphysical skill, and the other was the super ultimate physical skill. After a whole night of deduction and experimentation, Lin Yi finally got a glimpse of the door. Once it was really put into use in actual combat, his strength would inevitably soar again compared to his original strength. With Lin Yi's current condition, if he were to fight Chung Haonan again, the situation would be very different from before. Unless Chung Haonan went all black without caring about the consequences, Lin Yi wouldn't necessarily lose to him even if he didn't use the super bomb. Chung Haonan might not lose to Lin Yi. After mastering the essentials of the super physical skill and the super ultimate physical skill, Lin Yi didn't stop there. His requirements for himself were not limited to simple imitation, but to integrate his own strengths and further combine and create, just like the Thousand Raging Flame Fist. Compared to specific martial arts moves like the Thousand Raging Sand Fist, it was easier to integrate the super physical skill with Lin Yi's own strengths. For example, the butterfly subtle steps he was thinking of at the moment could be added with the true qi to stimulate the cell vitality, making it an advanced version of the butterfly subtle steps. To be continued. Chapter 4500. If it was necessary, Lin Yi could even turn it into extreme butterfly microsteps. Of course, the burden of using extreme butterfly microsteps was too great. If he used it, he would definitely suffer internal injuries. Moreover, Lin Yi hadn't mastered this extreme technique yet, so it was better to avoid it as much as possible. It's coming! Lin Yi's eyes suddenly flashed. In the process of deducing the super-physical skills and the ultra-ultimate physical skills, he had already felt that restless feeling from before. When he thought of the ultimate butterfly microsteps, the feeling became even more intense and surging. The originally majestic and silent Shinchi in his body began to circulate uncontrollably on its own, faster and faster. Every meridian in his body became extremely active, and his dantian was even more turbulent. This was a sign that he was about to break through. At this moment, the sky outside gradually brightened. Lin Yi had been preparing for the whole night, and the exciting moment had finally arrived. The sky was bright, and Magic Cold Plaza became lively again. However, unlike the South Continent Escort Agency Conference 3 days ago, the number of people gathered here today was much smaller. After all, there was no competition, so there was no excitement to watch. Apart from the people from the escort agencies and the Chamber of Commerce, no one else would come here to join in the fun. Of course, now that Magic Cold Plaza was surrounded by the escorts sent by the new 5 major escort agencies. Unless they received an invitation, normal people wouldn't be able to sneak in even if they wanted to join in the fun. After all, in today's conference, a large number of orders would be signed, and many trade secrets would be involved. Naturally, outsiders couldn't come in and watch. The conference hadn't officially started, but most of the people present had already arrived. In the core circle, the new overlord of the escort agencies, Qi Mingyuan, was in high spirits. He was talking and laughing. At this moment, none of the people standing around him were ordinary people. The manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's Wei Arc branch, Honest Chai, the head of the Black Eagle Escort Agency, Zhao Shanying, and the others were also the heads of the various escort agencies and the big shots of the Chamber of Commerce. All of them were important people, and with Qi Mingyuan as the center, they had already formed a new core circle of interests. In contrast, Boundless Sea, who had been popular in the past, was now cold and empty. Although the 4 Seas Escort Agency barely managed to retain its position as one of the top 5 escort agencies, there wasn't even a single person who came to support them. But everyone knew the awkward situation it was in now, and businessmen were always the best at adapting to the wind. It was simply wishful thinking for them to offer help in a time of need. Looking at Qi Mingyuan's group, Boundless Sea's complexion alternated between green and purple. He had been given the cold shoulder in front of everyone's eyes. How could he accept this? Being left alone like this was too embarrassing. It was easy to become a joke. Boundless Sea clenched his teeth and took the initiative to strike up a conversation. This would have been unthinkable in the past, but he had no other choice. However, no matter what, he was still the boss of one of the 5 great escort companies. Boundless Sea couldn't lower himself to talk to a normal person. As for Qi Mingyuan's core interest circle, it was impossible for him to take the initiative to ask for a snub. He could only set his target on the head of God Wind Escort Agency, Zhao Bufan. After all, they had worked together for many years and were friends. "Ha, Zhao." Boundless Sea walked over and squeezed out a smile. But before he could say anything, Zhao Bufan suddenly left with his people. He was left with his mouth open awkwardly, and he swallowed the second half of his sentence. He looked at Zhao Bufan again. He glanced at him with a smile that wasn't a smile, and then turned to talk to Qi Mingyuan. Qi Mingyuan obviously didn't refuse this kind of big shot. The two immediately started chatting, leaving Boundless Sea alone in the cold wind. This chief escort, Zhao, really is an interesting person. Brother Ling, look at that old bastard Boundless Sea's expression. It's too funny, ha ha. Qi Wenhan saw this scene clearly and couldn't help but hold his stomach and laugh loudly. Even though it's said that everyone kicks a wall when it's down, Boundless Sea is the head escort of the 4 Seas Escort Agency. For him to suddenly fall to such an embarrassing state where no one cares about him is quite unexpected. Lin Yi was speechless as he shook his head. As the saying goes, a tiger dies with prestige. Normally, even if he fell, he shouldn't be so miserable. Moreover, the Four Seas escort agency hadn't truly collapsed yet. The people here were really realistic. The South Continent Sea has always been like this. They only care about benefits and don't care about relationships. These people change their attitude faster than flipping a book. Chi Wen-han smiled, not minding it. He looked Lin Yi up and down. Ling bro, did you eat some kind of elixir today? Why do I feel like you're different? You're so energetic, aren't you? No, Brother Chi, you must be mistaken. Lin Yi smiled faintly. An hour ago, he had successfully broken through from the middle stage of Golden Core to the peak of the middle stage. Naturally, he was in high spirits and glowing. However, he had always been low-key. This was something that only he knew. There was nothing to announce. Is that so? Perhaps. Chi Wen-han scratched his head in confusion. He didn't continue asking because Chi Mingyuan had already led everyone onto the stage. The South Continent Escort Agency Alliance Conference had begun. As the new head of the escort agencies, according to convention, Chi Mingyuan naturally had to give an opening speech. However, he was different from Boundless Sea, who liked to put on airs. In this segment, he only said a few words symbolically and brushed it off with a few words. He went straight to the point and began to host the discussion about the cooperation between the major escort agencies and the various merchant guilds. The people in charge of the escort agencies were instantly energized. Every one of them was eager to start. This was the most important event of the day. In the next 5 years, whether their escort agencies ate meat or drank soup, or perhaps they couldn't even drink soup and could only eat northwest wind, all depended on how many orders they could pull in today. However, everyone knew in their hearts that even though the conference had not officially begun, the result was already decided. This was because this was a conference to share the fruits of victory. As the name implied, only the winners at the top of the rankings could share the biggest fruits. As for those losers who had lost their momentum, they could only look on enviously. What I'm most curious about right now is how many orders Boundless Sea and his Four Seas escort agency can get. Brother Ling, why don't you take a guess? Chi Wen-han said with a smile, full of interest. In the past, their Four Seas escort agency always monopolized 20% of the shares. That's called being high and mighty, but this time it's going to be difficult. I can't guess that, but seeing the cold reception he received just now, it must have shrunk greatly this time. The Four Seas escort agency won't have an easy time in the coming days. Lin Yi smiled and changed the topic. In comparison, I'm more curious about something else. Why didn't Long Kiba or his Dragon Boat escort agency send a single person? Chapter 45:01. Isn't that obvious? He was so embarrassed yesterday that he doesn't have the face to come again. Anyway, there won't be any orders if he comes, Chi Wen-han said with a pout. That can't be right. Even if he knows there won't be any orders, his Dragon Boat escort agency hasn't been removed yet. Even if Long Kiba doesn't want to come out and embarrass himself, he should at least send someone to represent him. Right? Lin, he still felt it was a little strange. Now that you mention it, it really is a little strange. Chi Wen-han couldn't help but frown. As the two of them were talking, a wave of clamorous noise suddenly sounded out from the entrance of Devil Cold Square, and everyone couldn't help but turn around to look. They saw two figures were slowly walking towards the center of the square amidst the chaos. One of them was Long Kiba, and the other was shockingly the evil cultivator that had fled in public yesterday, Chung Haonan. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. No one expected that Chung Haonan, the evil cultivator that everyone wanted to kill, not only did he not escape to the end of the world, he actually dared to come back so brazenly. Moreover, he even came to the venue where the experts of the escort agency gathered. Looking at Chung Haonan walking over with an evil smile on his face as if there was no one else around, everyone blurted out at the same time, "Does this guy want to die?" There must be something wrong when something is out of the ordinary. It seems like there's a change in the situation. Lin Yi's face darkened slightly. He didn't believe that Chung Haonan was an idiot who was courting death. He didn't have such thoughts in the past, and he definitely wouldn't have such thoughts after studying the wonders of the super physical skill and the ultimate physical skill last night. Chung Haonan was definitely an extremely shrewd guy. Since he dared to come back so brazenly, it meant that he definitely had something to rely on. Moreover, this reliance was so strong that he could ignore his identity as an evil cultivator. Why? It seems like everyone doesn't welcome me. Chung Haonan's gaze slowly swept across everyone's faces. His brows were filled with arrogance and complacency, and he didn't take anyone seriously at all. The entire Demon Cold Square was stunned as they watched Chung Haonan and Long Kiba walk into the center of the square. Qi Mingyuan, who was the #1 person in the Demon Cold Square, finally reacted. His face turned gloomy, and he was about to give the order to arrest Chung Haonan and Long Kiba, since Chung Haonan, a heretic cultivator, dared to come here without the slightest scruple. This was clearly a provocation to him, the new overlord of the escort agency. Before Qi Mingyuan could say anything, Boundless Sea stood up, his eyes shining. This was a great opportunity in front of him. No matter how awkward the situation had been, as long as he could get some reputation back from this evil cultivator, then everything would be resolved. Boundless Sea slammed the table impatiently and roared with righteous indignation. In broad daylight, a mere evil cultivator dares to come back so arrogantly on behalf of the South Continent Escort Agency. Before he could finish speaking, a gust of wind suddenly blew in the sky above Demon Cold Square. An extremely thick black fog descended from the sky with an endless evil aura, causing everyone's expression to change and tremble in fear. Feeling the powerful pressure coming from the black fog, everyone couldn't help but feel their hearts tremble, and they cried out involuntarily. The high platform where Qi Mingyuan and the others were originally on was instantly blown away by the gust of wind brought by the black fog. For a moment, many experts were thrown off their feet, and they were in a sorry state. After a moment, the recklessly sweeping gust of wind gradually dissipated, and the figure of an old man slowly appeared from within the black fog. He had green hair and red eyebrows, and his appearance was indescribably strange. The old man's sinister eyes swept across the crowd disdainfully. His body didn't emit a powerful and heaven-defying aura, but an invisible pressure made everyone unable to breathe. In particular, Qi Mingyuan and the others, who were the closest to him, felt as if the blood in their bodies had suddenly frozen, and they felt a bone-chilling coldness for no reason. Why does this person look so much like Wu Baoliang? Lin Yi looked at the strange old man from afar, and couldn't help but mutter to himself. Wu Baoliang had a pair of triangular yin-yang eyes that were different from normal people, apart from the strange appearance of this old man who descended from the sky. His eyes were extremely similar to Wu Baoliang's. Could this person be Wu Baoliang's relative, or even his father? At this moment, no one dared to speak. Everyone stared blankly at this strange old man. Although the other party didn't start a fight as soon as he arrived, everyone could tell that this person clearly didn't come with good intentions. Which evil spirit dares to behave atrociously in our South Continent Escort Agency conference? Chung Haonan, do you think that you can disregard our righteous path just because you found a backer? Humph. This head escort will represent the will of heaven today. While everyone was still in a daze, Boundless Sea suddenly stood up and roared. He immediately pounced towards Chung Haonan. This was a rare opportunity to turn things around. If it was just a mere Chung Haonan, even if Boundless Sea took him down first, it wouldn't be very convincing. But now, a strange old man, who was clearly not to be trifled with, had appeared. Everyone was so scared that they didn't dare to move. Wasn't this the perfect opportunity to display Boundless Sea's boldness and responsibility? Boundless Sea secretly glanced at Qi Mingyuan. Seeing how the other side was acting as if he was facing a great enemy, Boundless Sea felt very pleased. He wasn't afraid of not knowing the goods, but he was afraid of comparing the goods. With Qi Mingyuan, the so-called new overlord of the escort agencies, as a comparison, he could make his image even more prominent. After today's matter, it was clear who was more suitable to lead the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance in the future. With all sorts of wishful thinking in his mind, Boundless Sea felt his body become much lighter. Of course, he wasn't stupid. He only attacked Chung Haonan, who he had confidence in. As for that strange old man who was clearly not to be trifled with, it would be safer to wait for him to call out and lead everyone to surround and attack him. However, Chung Haonan, who was listed by Boundless Sea as a target to increase his reputation, was looking at him with a faint smile. He was calm and unruffled in the midst of the chaos, with his arms crossed. He had no intention of attacking. "Who do you think you are?" An extremely dry and harsh shout came from behind him. At the same time, an indescribable force suddenly descended on his back. Boundless Sea didn't even have time to recover from his complacency. His whole body was slapped into the ground like a fly, and he sunk more than 3 feet into the ground. Hiss! Everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Boundless Sea was an expert at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. Even if he wasn't one of the best in the entire South Continent Escort Agency Alliance, he was at least in the top 5. Who would have thought that he wouldn't even be able to withstand one move from this strange old man? And from the looks of it, the old man hadn't even used his full strength yet. A giant in the mountain opening stage, Qi Mingyuan, and the others who had some experience suddenly felt their hearts turn upside down. Although he hadn't shown his full strength from this simple attack, they could see that this strange old man was actually a mountain opening stage expert. Our 1152. Chapter 45:02. In the South Continent Sea, where even a profound ascending stage master could do whatever he wanted, there was actually a mountain opening stage master. At this moment, everyone was so shocked that they could not even close their mouths. Everyone was shocked speechless, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. This was not the East Continent College's disciple selection. Why did such an invincible existence suddenly appear? In an instant, the people who did not dare to move did not even dare to breathe. They all looked at each other and did not dare to make a sound. Don't look at how many masters were gathered here. Once they attacked together, even a mysterious ascending stage master might not be able to handle it. But now the opponent was a mountain opening stage giant. This kind of unrealistic idea was better to quickly put an end to it. If they were to really fight, even if they all attacked together, it would not be enough to kill them. Mountain opening stage evil cultivator master, today is really a joke. Qi Wenhan smiled bitterly with an ugly expression. The black fog on this strange old man was much thicker than Wu Baoliang and Chung Haonan's. His evil aura deterred everyone present. If they still could not tell that this person was an evil cultivator, then everyone's eyeballs should be dug out. Anyway, it was useless to have it on his face. Linny nodded with a gloomy expression and did not speak. From the moment this strange old man appeared, the whole situation had completely gone out of control. Even the insignificant people present were trembling with fear. Lin Yi, who was stared at by Chung Haonan with malicious intent, was naturally in a precarious position. He was probably in danger today. He clenched his fists. At this time, he could not rely on others. He could only rely on himself. Although there were so many people present who kept shouting that good and evil could not coexist and chased after Chung Haonan like a rat on the street, times had changed. With absolute strength, he had absolute right to speak. With the terrifying strength of this strange old man at the mountain opening stage, it did not matter whether he was an evil cultivator or not, because no one present dared to resist him no matter what he said. Once they resisted, there would only be one end: death. The situation was stronger than the person. At this time, no one dared not to bow down. Not to mention that the opponent was an evil cultivator. Even if the opponent was a bandit who robbed all their belongings, no one present would dare to act rashly. They could only swallow their pride and obediently bury their heads like ostriches. Facing a heretic cultivator at the mountain opening stage, it wasn't sad to pretend to be a coward. It was sad to die. Amidst the deathly silence, Boundless Sea, who was embedded in the ground, struggled for a bit. With his face covered in blood, he climbed up in a sorry state, panting heavily. After all, he was an expert at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. Before the opponent got serious, he wouldn't die so easily. Of course, he was in a sorry state, and he was also heavily injured. Boundless Sea tossed his laughable plan of farming reputation to the back of his mind. After staggering up, he didn't even look at Chung Haonan. He only dared to sneak a glance at the strange old man. Like everyone else, he shrunk his neck, not daring to breathe. However, Boundless Sea didn't dare cause trouble for himself, but this strange old man's gaze fell on him. Who told this idiot to steal the limelight? You're the host of this shitty conference. The strange old man looked coldly at Boundless Sea. His voice was even drier and more ear-piercing than before, giving everyone goosebumps. It was extremely unpleasant to listen to, but no matter how unpleasant it was, no one had any objections. They could only obediently endure it. Being stared at by the strange old man's sinister gaze, Boundless Sea instantly pissed his pants. His knees went soft, and he couldn't help but kneel on the ground. He hurriedly shook his head and stammered, No, this humble one isn't. That person is. This humble one was impulsive just now. Please forgive this humble one's offense." Boundless Sea pointed at Qi Mingyuan. Without hesitation, he sold out the new overlord of the escort agency. Everyone in the audience immediately looked at him with disdain. Even though they didn't dare to go against this evil cultivator in front of them, this didn't stop them from looking down on this spineless Boundless Sea. He spoke righteously and sternly, but at this critical moment, he really was more nimble than anyone else. Seeing the strange old man's sinister gaze, Qi Mingyuan's heart tightened, but he didn't say anything. Even though he couldn't go against this kind of existence, he definitely wouldn't be like Boundless Sea and shamelessly kneel in front of everyone. Okay, it doesn't matter who it is. In any case, this sect will temporarily take over your conference. If there's anyone who isn't satisfied, you can bring it up right now, the strange old man said with a condescending expression. Everyone nodded their heads. No one dared to say anything at this moment. Opposing would be courting death. No one here was an idiot, and no one would be the one to stick their head out. Not bad. You're all tactful. Even though there haven't been 10,000 experts that have died by my hands, there's at least 8,000. However, after these years of cultivation, this sect doesn't really want to go on a killing spree. Being a bit more obedient is also a good thing for you. The strange old man smiled sinisterly, and then added, "Let me introduce myself. This sect comes from Western Mountain, and my Dao name is Western Mountain Elder." Western Mountain Elder. The entire Magic Cold Plaza immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. If it was said that there was a trace of unrealistic hope in everyone's hearts before, now that hope had been completely shattered, no one dared to harbor any disloyal thoughts anymore. What about Western Mountain? He couldn't help but be slightly surprised when he saw everyone's shocked expressions. He had heard of Western Island, but he had never heard of Western Mountain. Could it be a special place in the southern continent sea? Huh. Brother Ling, you actually don't know? Chi Wen-han, who was beside him, had a surprised look on his face. He quickly lowered his voice and explained, Western Mountain is the most famous gathering place for heretic cultivators. The most ferocious and strongest heretic cultivators in the entire Heaven Stage Island are all gathered in Western Mountain, forming a Western Mountain Evil sect. I heard that the leader of this Western Mountain Evil sect is called Western Mountain Elder, and the second leader under him is this Western Mountain Elder. A gathering place for heretic cultivators? There's such a place? He instantly felt even more strange. He had never heard of such a thing. Were heretic cultivators not like street rats that could only hide and not see the light of day? The existence of heretic cultivators could not even be tolerated in a chaotic place like the southern continent sea, let alone Heaven Stage Island, where there were many other powerful sections. In the understanding of normal people, a gathering place for heretic cultivators like Western Mountain Evil sect that existed openly was obviously waiting for the major sects to join forces and encircle and annihilate it. Yes, it has existed for a long time. I heard that many years ago, the major sects of Middle Island, Northern Island, and Western Island even joined forces to encircle and annihilate it. But in the end, nothing happened. Chi Wen-han shrugged and sighed. What? Western Mountain Evil sect is actually so strong. He could not help but click his tongue as he asked in shock. Our 1152. Chapter 45:03. Even though they had a mountain opening stage powerhouse, the other sects on Heavenly Island weren't to be trifled with. With the combined forces of the Middle, North, and West Islands, if they really sent out their top experts, Shishan Evil Sect wouldn't be able to hold on no matter how strong they were. Shishan Evil Sect is strong, but apparently the two sides didn't really fight. The Righteous Alliance only knows that Shishan is somewhere between West Island and South Continent, but they don't know the exact location. Plus, that area of the sea is extremely dangerous, and there seems to be all sorts of high-level formations set up around it. The Righteous Alliance spent a month there and still couldn't find Shishan Evil Sect's nest, so they had no choice but to let it go, Chi Wen-han explained. He had only heard it from others and didn't know much about it. The version he told Lin-yi was the most widely spread version. As for whether or not it was true, only the person involved would know. So that's how it is. Lin-yi nodded in realization. That made sense. If the two sides were to fight head-on, and the alliance of the righteous sects still couldn't beat the evil sects, it'd really be a bit speechless. Wouldn't that be the Sky-class island version of 6 sects surrounding Light Peak? As the two whispered to each other, Chung Haonan had already walked up to Shishan Old Sect's side. Shishan Old Sect's next words made everyone's eyelids twitch. Chung Haonan is now our sect's disciple. I've officially accepted him as my disciple. From what you said, it seems like you want to kill him. No, that's not true. Senior, you misunderstood. Boundless Sea was scared half to death and hastily tried to explain. He suddenly saw the mocking expression on Lin Yi's face and immediately said loudly, It's Ling One. Yes, it's Ling One who wants to kill him. Everyone was speechless. Boundless Sea was the only one who could be this shameless. Just now, he had clearly wanted to use Chung Haonan to boost his reputation. Now that disaster was upon him. He didn't even bat an eyelid and pushed the blame onto Chung Haonan. Ling One, following Boundless Sea's finger, West Mountain's old sect master's sinister gaze fell on Lin Yi. He laughed coldly. My previous disciple, Wu Baoliang, died by your hands. Not bad. Lin Yi calmly nodded his head. There was no way he could deny it. Plus, with his personality, he wouldn't deny it either. After all, he wasn't Boundless Sea. Oh, you dare to take responsibility for your actions? I didn't expect you to be a real man. The West Mountain Elder's already strange expression suddenly became even more ferocious and terrifying. He shouted coldly, "Do you know that he is not only my direct disciple, but also my nephew?" I didn't know, but now I know. Lin Yi's expression was still indifferent. He thought to himself, no wonder these two have a pair of triangular yin-yang eyes. So they are uncle and nephew. Listening to Lin Yi's infuriating reply, everyone present couldn't help but have strange expressions, especially Qi Wenhan, Qi Mingyuan, and Honest Chai. They were sweating for him, thinking that Master Ling was still too young. This wasn't the time to act like a hero. He'd really die if he did that. Sure enough, West Mountain's old sect master was so angry that his face turned ashen. It was almost the same color as his eyebrows. Black fog suddenly surged out from his head. The sky instantly darkened. It was as if the end of the world was coming. Just when everyone thought that West Mountain's old sect master couldn't hold back his killing intent, and that Lin Yi was dead for sure, the black clouds above his head suddenly dispersed. The sky became clear again, and the sun shone brightly. West Mountain's old sect master's killing intent suddenly disappeared. He didn't get angry, and instead laughed. "You have guts, you really have guts. This nephew of mine is the same as you." Back then, he dared to break out of the mountain just for a trivial matter. I've long said that evil cultivators who swagger through the streets will not have a good ending. Now that he has fallen to this state, his death is not undeserved. Hearing his words, not only were the others confused, even Lin Yi was a little stunned. What did he mean by this? Everyone thought that he was going to take revenge for Wu Baoliang, but in the end, he actually changed the topic and said that Wu Baoliang's death was not unjust. The actions of experts were indeed unfathomable. This kind of strange thinking of an evil cultivator was even more incomprehensible. I also heard that the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was driven out by you. West Mountain's old sect master retracted his gaze from Lin Yi and changed the topic to this irrelevant matter. Everyone was even more confused and looked at each other. No, we didn't drive them out. We didn't drive them out. Boundless Sea was the first to recover from his shock and hurriedly said, "The Dragon Boat Escort Agency is ranked second. From now on, there will be 6 great escort agencies. The old calendar of 5 great escort agencies should be changed long ago." Everyone couldn't help but feel a burst of disdain. F***CK, this guy is too shameless. The ironclad rules of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance should be changed just like that. What King's 6 great escort agencies. Even at this time, they still didn't forget to take care of their own 4 C's escort agency. They were really cunning. Although in front of an evil cultivator, no one dared to say anything for the sake of their lives. Everyone still had a bit of integrity in their hearts. However, there was nothing much to say about someone like Boundless Sea. This guy had already become the evil cultivator's lackey. Not only was he not ashamed, he even had the shameless expression of a man who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. TSK, you're quite tactful. Scram to the side. Shishan's old sect master had a mocking smile on his face. He turned to look at Chung Haonan and said, "Disciple, let's get down to business. I'll give you a chance to personally take revenge. Go get rid of that Ling Yi, and then we'll go to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency together. It's rare for me to come out, so I have a lot of things to do this time." Long Kiba heard this and was immediately overjoyed. Previously, when Boundless Sea said that his dragon boat escort agency would once again become the #2 escort agency, he wasn't this excited. After all, this was expected. He had already mentally prepared himself for this, so there was nothing to be surprised about. But now, Shishan's old sect master actually said that he wanted to go to his dragon boat escort agency. This was something that he couldn't even dream of. Long Kiba was so excited that he almost slapped himself. F***CK. This is the great giant of the opening period. So what if he's an evil cultivator? Who would dare to say no? In the South Continent seas, there were often people who said that good and evil couldn't coexist. But from the expressions of everyone here, especially Boundless Sea, it could be seen that the bigger the fist was the truth. As long as one was strong enough, evil cultivators could also become mainstream. Not convinced? Then I'll punch you to death. R1152. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.